their camaraderie and their ability to play as a unit will be really, really good, and I think they can bounce back in the 3 series.
And here we go, launching into game number 1 of the Esports World Cup in our first matchup between T1 and Weibo Gaming.
And as we do get into this first game here with myself, Barry Baden, and Tamura, we're looking at the meta. We didn't touch on it in the pre-show, but we can do it now as we've got into this first game. What are we expecting to see? Because there's one particular comp, Tamura, that's going to shine ahead of the rest.
Yes, and that one particular comp is going to be playing around the gangplank. So we know that this is a very, very dominant 2 cost. We're going to be looking for that stretchy arm so that we can get a ranged GP. And you don't even need to have artifacts in order to enable that. It's going to be very dominant, even as a 2-star.
Yeah, the artifacts just elevate it to the extent where you're looking at a potential lobby winner. I do think in this particular meta, we're going to see the GP2 used to tempo on, and then it's going to be pushed towards those level 8s, level 9s. It's going to be very rare we see GP3, but like you said, if one of those artifacts comes along, that's when the lobby winner is almost determined.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see, how much they're willing to push levels, because we've seen, they can roll down a little bit on 6, but they do want to get to level 7. It's very, very important they do pick up that rise and get the 4 mentor online, because this is what really just enables the team comp. It's not just Gangplank, like the other mentors are really strong as well. We've seen a lot of dominance from Kobuko, as we do see Crazy Moving picking up a Katarina. Another 2-cost reroll comp that I think we can see a bit of. It's just a little bit hard because players will be denying the Katarinas.
Yeah, it certainly will be. It does, with so many people potentially playing GP, it does mean you can potentially get that Katarina 2 really early. We saw it picked up there with the Midas instantly as that power-up, so leaving the potential, if the items do come through, maybe you can temp off the back of it and pick up a bit extra gold, but we're going to see so much gold in these particular lobbies. These power-ups, for anybody new and hasn't played this set particularly, these power-ups can just accelerate your econ to an incredible extent.
Yeah, and they're going to be using that as tempos. It's very easy to just play around units and then remove them. We are, taking a while to choose our augments, which makes sense in a 4v4 environment. You can't be hasty about this. You can't just lock something in because it might ruin your teammates' abilities to shine. So I don't see Executioner Crown getting picked up, but we do get rid of a little bit of a randomness there. We don't want to be playing around the Wandering Trainer if we think that someone on our other team needs to be playing a specific line, as this could really ruin 2 players' games in one bad decision.
Yeah, worst case scenario, you end up contesting your own teammate, and we've seen this before in 4v4. It can cause a real big problem. Crazy Moving here, picked up that early Katarina with that Midas touch, clearly talking to the team there and decided, Executioners, this is my line. The rest of the game, we know what everyone else will be going towards, but I have my direction.
Yeah, that is actually quite interesting. I'm eating my own words there. It's not a standard line that I've seen too frequently, but maybe they've had some success with it. Maybe they just want something to lock themselves in, because we know that a lot of these other players are going to be contesting similar lines. And honestly, I thought that Katarina was just going to be used as tempo to farm a little bit of gold. But maybe we're going to be playing a standard line there, as we do see a Jinx picked up here from what I do believe is the unexpected expectedness. So maybe they want to pick that up early and then see what they get from it, then the other players can decide. That's one of those augments that might have been selected a little bit earlier than the other decisions.
Yeah, you talked about the randomness aspect potentially not being as favoured, but if you do have the one person on your team go first, and then they potentially take something like that, and then they have the Jinx come through, you have Star Guardian as an option. You can also potentially lean into the Snipers line with Juggernaut's front line, which has been very successful. So a few ways you could take this. And
SCSC, we can just see on the other side, has managed to pick up the Flicker Blaze there. So the Living Forge picked up means that we are going to be seeing multiple artifacts on that end, but that's just such a dominant artifact. We've seen it on the GP, especially if you can get onto the stretchy arms, the range. We've seen it on backline. If you can manage to get into Crystal Gambit, then the Ashe dominates with that item especially, but a great pickup, and if we're winning rounds early, then that's just going to scale out of control.
Yeah, Flicker Blade's incredible on GP, the likes of RFC as well, Sniper's Focus, any of these things just accelerate the comp so much. Flicker Blades is, I suppose, a little bit more flexible in that we know how strong GP is, but the likes of TF, incredible on it as well, so potentially even in the late game, it could use that on another carry if additional artifacts do come through.
Yep. And we can see Blue Buff being slammed over there by Salpimi. He's got the Buried Treasures, which is a very, very good 2-1 augment pickup. It allows you to be strong in the early game and just start slamming items because you know you're going to have an abundance of them. With previous changes to items, and I do believe it was the last set, we saw players favoring some of these item augments earlier just because you're not guaranteed to be able to get 3 items for your carry, 3 items for your tank, and then having utility on top of that.
Yeah, and I think in 4v4 especially, when you know your matchups coming through, if you have one of your teammates, Shimmer Scale Essence, you can have a long fight. You can go, okay, let's remove our damage from this fight. I want to stack this Moguls and get 2, 3, 4 gold potentially. So it does mean you can really tailor that and get extra econ coming through.
Yeah, and the econ is especially important as players are going to want to leverage that, especially in the mid game. Early game, you know, they can hold on to it for a little bit, but because we're going to be playing a denying game in the late game, sometimes these players aren't even going to make it that fast, though. Want to make sure, and I just want to hold that thought for a second, because we do have a Sterix slam there with the Flicker Blades, which is a little bit unconventional there with the Ezreal, but I mean, it's an item, it's a slam. It will make more sense as we get further late into the game.
Yeah, it certainly will. I think in general in 4v4 as well, you look, okay, which is our win streak player, which is our potential 5-loss player. And if you looked at these slams and thought that could potentially get me there, then it's always worth trying to have this. We do see on the other side, we're going to have the Zac hero augment coming through. So we actually touched on this a little bit backstage. We were talking about how viable this will be. Obviously, coming in here, you're going to hit it for free, and you can temp off the back of it. And I think Zac can certainly cause quite a lot of problems, especially in this GP matchup. This Mentor line has so much CC. Zac doesn't care about that at all.
Yeah, and I think that protagonist, you know, it's something that's just picked up by a lot of players in solo queue, because they feel that, you know, if I can guarantee my carry, you know, I get the right items, then I'm going to be put into a really, really comfortable spot to play for a high placement. And, you know, in a 4v4 environment, that kind of allows them to be the player to start denying units earlier. You know, they don't have to worry too much about holding onto a lot of gold to hit their units, because they're guaranteed it anyway.
Yeah, certainly the case. Just as a quick overview here, we can see exactly what everybody does have coming through. As you mentioned, that buried treasures for Saupimi. There's so many of these compositions. I think if he's leaning towards potentially something like the Yuumi line, you can even, if you get those extra AD items, compare it with Caitlyn. So we do see that particular composition really liking extra items.
Yep. And we see some of the other options. We do see a lot of favor towards the Shimmer Scale. We've got multiple players who've picked that up, seeming to favor the econ. I wonder, you know, are they able to stall out some of their fights if they have matchups against their own teammates? Can we try and stall the fight? Can we get it going longer and farm even more gold? The only downside that I would say towards that style of playing is if you have something like a Gargoyles, the Moguls in the front line, is if they can't kill that unit, they're going to be doing devastating losses to their opponents.
Yeah, you don't want to be in a position where your teammates made themselves weaker so that you can scale that Moguls and get as much econ as possible, and then you're just getting 4 or 5 board. So that would be a bit of a devastating result from it. So I do think some of these, we've already seen players here shifting, selling some of their carries, keeping items on the bench. They're already thinking of potential matchups. They don't want to be doing massive damage to their own teams. Yeah,
and on top of that, talking about sacking boards to try and make their board weaker against some of their teammates, be interesting to see, you know, how flexible these players are playing around their fruits, because when you do pick up a fruit that matches your carry or your front line really well, you want to hold on to it so you can be stronger for the entirety of the game. But sometimes you might want to actually just remove that so that you're not dealing out horrible losses, especially in the early game.
Yeah, I do think coming in as well, in the past, magnetic removers were always really powerful in 4v4. You can make yourself weaker, you can give that round to your teammate. Now with the power-ups coming through, it does even give the potential, another way to make yourself weaker, as you've said. So I don't think we'll be getting to the point in Stage 5 where people have 4 or 5 power-ups remaining. I think they're going to be more frequently popped on, popped back off.
Yeah, and I'd say that we have quite a lot of standard augment selections. Nothing's kind of jumping out to me too crazy. We'll see a little bit more variance when it comes to you know, certain players maybe having one player taking something like the Wandering Trainer and then the others deciding. But it honestly seems like for the first game, maybe they're just playing a little bit more comfort-based. They don't want to be throwing too many things out there and just sticking to what they know for now.
Yeah, and like we said, it's the first game of the first series, so there's a lot of time to experiment and show extra things as the days goes on. You don't want to be in a position where you've played your hand and you've revealed something that you've been keeping close to your chest in scrims and you don't want to come out swinging with it straight away. I do reckon we'll see something come out at some point from one of these teams that basically none of us expected.
And we actually just saw a pre-level there from Dooney Zuni, maybe trying to look to find some higher cost units. A lot of the times when you're playing around Zac as your front line, they're duo carrying the Kale, of course. However, with the protagonist hero augment, we don't need to stay on level 4, we don't need to roll lots. We're going to be collecting a lot of copies of the Zac anyway. But speaking of rolling, we do have a crew game lined up here for LBTZ. Looks like they're going to be popping a few rolls here and just trying to get the most of it. Really, really good setup here. I like the fact that they've got the Moguls there onto the Malphite. It's usually a solo frontline unit in this comp, so it's good to see.
Yeah, this comp, Shimmer Scale Essence coming in for crew is really, really good. That when you get that Gamblers, Ziggs loves this item. So early game, you can run it on top of Sivir potentially. We already see a Ziggs pair coming through. We kind of thought that there'd be a crew game potentially every lobby because it's just reliable. It's something that can get you into that top 4, potentially even a 5th place, which in 4v4 solid enough.
And it's really hard to deny. When you're talking about 2-cost rerolls, such as the GP, and trying to go for it, a lot of the players, even if they're pushing to level 8, they are going to be holding on to the copies of the 2-cost. 3-cost especially as well. However, when you're talking about a comp which relies on hitting your 1-cost early, it's really, really hard to deny it because you're not going to have the ability to hold on to that much econ. You're going to be really griefing your own game if you're holding on to lots of Sivers or Malphites. And especially with the extra econ from the Moguls, they're going to be doing so much of their rolling on 3-1 that they should be getting close to their 3 stars by the second carousel.
We do actually see here just there's potentially one on each team. So looking on the other side there, LBTC and Bintium both look like our crew players. So both still pretty likely to hit. It is a composition that can support 2 players, but potentially one of them is going to be a little bit lower cap. So whoever does get this crew rolling early, gets at least 2 of them 3-starred, will be in a much stronger position. And
it's interesting that they have the exact same augment selection there with the Shimmer Scale, so they're going to be playing a very similar game. I wonder if it's kind of like a defense thing. If someone has that options to the Shimmer Scale in a 4v4 setting, and then they scout and they see that someone else has taken it, and they're going to play the crew, they go, okay, well, you're on defense. You have to play against that, because if we just give it to them for free, then they're going to get a free crew game.
Yeah, and if you determine that someone else on your team has a really, really good spot, you could be like, okay, I can deny someone on their side that has a really good opener. We can hold hands and go potentially 5th, 6th together. The other 3 players on my team have a better spot than their 3, so it could have been a factor for you.
Yeah. And yeah, you do have to at least have some copies of it, otherwise you're going to be falling way too far behind and then you're just going to be throwing your own game. So we do see Dunizuni in a very, very powerful position here. Does manage to pick up extra Ionic Spark there as well. So it's going to be very, very powerful with this Zac here, as we've seen, a lot of HP preservation here. 93 HP, not on a massive win streak, but definitely saving a lot of HP, and it's going to be putting himself in a very good team spot as he can now start to look to deny as much as possible.
Yeah, and you touched on it before about how you off the back of this protagonist, you're just going to guarantee that 3-star, you keep pushing levels. With Zac especially, you can potentially have the second Zac 3-star as a tank, which sometimes the comp is missing. We know how good Kale alone, once you get to 9, even at 2-star, can be. So this is a really, really good one for just allowing you to tempo. It provides a tank while you're waiting for that 4-star. It allows you to just go 9 with Kale. Should be in a really, really good spot.
We did see Dunizuni holding on to the Spark just to make sure in case he versus one of his teammates. However, he does have access to 2 removers, so maybe he's been bullying his team a little bit in the early game, or maybe the losses weren't too devastating. As we do get a look around the rest of the boards. We did predict this earlier when seeing the Flicker Blaze there was going to be playing on towards the GP. So slamming the Sterix there didn't make a whole lot of sense towards the Ezreal, but save a little bit of HP. And now this is a very fine item because it's decent on GP. And then if we do get access to something like an Edge of Night, or we want to go for something else like an IE to get a little bit more damage, Sterix is a great slam because it can go on Kobuko, it can go on Yasuo if we get to Yasuo 3. There's so many other options.
Yeah, really good tank item. Just looking already has a rise to mirror. So econ-wise isn't looking too good. Has so many pairs that I assume SCSC decided, okay, I must hit one of these, and looks to have dug pretty deep, and that hasn't been the case. Does have a pair of pretty much even Rise at level 6. Holding that Rise is going to be really, really important. It's going to be such a contested unit. As long as he can get 1 or 2 of these upgrades coming through in the next few rounds, he should be fine. If not, his econ is looking a little bit suspect.
Yeah, the good thing about GP is at least he can farm some of that econ back, but he really needs to be getting this 2-star online because that's when you're going to start to farm and have a lot of money income throughout all of Stage 3. It looks like he's rolled down very, very deep. Not sure if he was willing to sell the Rise pair to maybe bring up his econ a little bit more. It's not a unit that's traditionally itemized too much in that line. It can do well if you get towards the late game and you have items on your Kobuko, your GP, and then finally you can start to get some for your Rise. But even Yasuo is often favored as well. So it'll be interesting to see if he can hit that and then still tempo because his items are really good. It's just the rolls he's not hitting.
Yeah, we talked about Rise being a potential hold in pretty much every game. But like you said, when his econ's in such a rough spot, that maybe isn't going to be the case.
See Bintim there picking up a belt on the Leona. As we see a few other things going past, but I don't think we've seen too many players in a position to be playing around that line. It's like relatively standard, but a lot of the times when the Sorks are heavily contested, players do like to default towards the Yuumi and the Leona. It's very, very good synergy, and it's nice way to build a board. And there we do see finally the GP2. Now this board is looking very strong, and we only have 10 gold to work with, but I think we can start to build up our econ again.
Yeah, it's such a cheap board to be able to stabilize. We know how good it can be. GP can just start farming you so much gold, should be really strong. We do check in here with one of our crew players who is rolling really, really deep here, is trying to get ahead on this line, ahead of the opposition. Is in an okay spot, but has rolled pretty deep and has yet to hit that Sivir. You just need to get to that 2 2 crew 3-star point, and then you can really scale off the back of it.
That's absolutely brutal, especially when, you know, you have to play up against someone who's doing exactly what you are, and they're going to be taking all of the same units. And you know, we can build up a little bit more money with this Gambler's Blade. The Moguls is going to be proccing for quite some time, but unfortunately we do get sniped out by an Akali. Having our carry in the corner means that it's very easy for Salpimi to position that Akali, and Akali, a very strong unit, especially picked up with anti-heal and a Rabadons, is able to snipe backline.
Yeah, and in these particular compositions where you have that solo frontliner that is just massive, Akali absolutely eats these up. The backline is just a free hit. Even if you position around it a little bit, you're still going to be, eventually she will find her way on top of your carry. And in this particular comp, we touched on it's very solo frontline heavy. We do see is closing in on potentially some of those 3 stars, but as you've said, not in the strongest position.
And Salpimi showing off his skill, showing off why he's one of the best players in the world. He's got the buried treasures as well as Savage. Like he can do anything from here, anything that he sets his mind to. A very interesting board kind of set up here. We've got double Steric slammed as well, and very unconventional line, I would say, but it seems to be working as picking up a couple of wins. Go back to the exact polar opposite with Dunizuni, who's got a very standard game, hasn't had to, you know, cook that much here. I'd say there's a very standard way to play Zac.
Yeah, 2 completely different spots. Someone that's left themselves very flexible, which we didn't think would really be happening too much in this particular meta. So Salpimi doesn't have a lot of HP to work with, so I'm a little concerned of if they're able to stabilize off the back of that. But as you've said, a player here that is in a perfectly good spot, has that Zac. Unfortunately, we'll be losing this round to the Katarina player, but Katarina, we know how strong they are in Stage 3.
And managed to pick up the Healing Orbs as well for Katarina. Very, very powerful. Healing Orbs as an augment is very strong when you have a super tank, and then all of your carries are killing things like Leona, and then Leona just keeps picking up the Healing Orbs. Or you do the alternative route where you have a melee carry, and the melee carry unit is going to be getting the kills, getting the HP back, and especially when you have items like Hodge in the execution line, they're going to be getting so much extra damage by staying full HP.
A fairly early Cassante picked up here, so does have the Akali and Cassante. Could lead towards that all-out. The extra items is really good in this composition. You do need to itemize 2 full carries, and then you want things like Protector's Vow on top of Jarvan. So it does have the core of the composition already. Would be relying on hitting that all-out, and needs a few more items for that Cassante.
He has a lot of swords. You can see the Sterics, you can break them apart. Yep. The only thing that I think he's missing is the gloves. You really want IE on the Cassante when you're playing the all-out variant, as well as the fact that Akali really likes the Hodge. So we're going to, you know, need a couple of those to come through, but we can get away with what we have for now. And if you hit 2-star Akali with Rabadons plus those items, then maybe you can just deal with that and get the, you know, true Biss onto your Cassante later.
And the expected player here coming through actually looks like they're pivoting towards this Soulfighter line. So it's something we thought might get played a little bit. Potentially this variant where it's more so leaning into the Volley Bear carry. We've seen Volley has a really good matchup into the likes of GP. A little bit of rolling down here, and has picked up the core of that composition.
Yep, and we can see over there on SCSC, he's managed to pick up an RFC. So yeah, there's the range. You know, he's got the flick evades. Doesn't even need stretchy arms if he didn't want it. He's going to have infinite range here. Interesting with the RFC though, some people still sometimes go for it. I do believe there's a slight difference between takedowns and kills when it comes to RFC, as well as the stretchy arms. So maybe he'll still go for it just to get that guaranteed range extender. However, regardless, his spot's looking really, really good. He just needs more money.
Yeah, and it does mean that position-wise, it's so easy to keep this GP safe. You can put them on the second row straight away. There's no risk that you're ever really wrong side. GP is just going to be untouched for the entire fight.
Okay, this was a hard game to play before this, but now we've picked up that bronze for life. I think he even had a really easy option. I think there was a last-second save, another really strong augment selection that people really like to pick up because they know it's just guaranteed healing. However, Salpimi he's showing up. This is going to be either a masterclass or a disaster class.
Yeah, we'll have to go back to them a bit later on to see if they were able to stabilize that. The one thing that potentially they do have in their favor, some of these salvage bin turns, and when you're doing this massive pivot, you can take a really big loss. If he does come up against one of his teammates, it might be able to just help him a little bit, just take one of those smaller losses, stabilize somewhat.
Yep, and we can see there's the Prowler's Claw there picked up for the Yasuo, so he's going to be dashing around a little bit more than usual. We've got some really nice items there on towards the front line. The utility there from the Koboko is going to be getting a lot of extra HP there. Does have access to the Sunder, and you know, keeping your GP safe, yes, true. However, we did just get charged by Cassante and then jumped onto by an Akali. So GP is running away, and it looks like he's going to be getting towards the back line, and Akali is not able to get back onto the GP anytime soon. And he is able to heal all the way back up, and wow, what a dominant show from a team built from 2 stars.
Yeah, and it just shows how powerful that GP is, because the positioning, as you said, was quite good. Cassandre and Akali did both get onto GP. GP was just able to kind of de-aggro. Akali left. GP went to the back line and just cleaned everything up. Checking in here with Bintium, one of the 2 crew players in the lobby. It's level 6, 10 gold. Not the strongest position to be in, but we did expect both these players will be having a fairly low cap.
And if you look over there towards the right side of the screen, we can actually see the color of the jerseys is quite a nice indicator of where our team's standing. And as you start to get into stage 4, it gets a little bit dicey. Players having multiple players below 50 HP means that as they do finally stumble their way into stage 5, they're only going to be on 1 to 2 lives. It's going to be very, very dangerous, and you do have to verse your teammate at some point. And if any of those 3 bottom players verse each other, then they're going to be in a lot of trouble. Whereas it looks like T1's got a lot more HP to work with.
Yeah, and for T1 here, they'll be aware of this. They'll be looking at that and thinking, okay, Weibo have 3 players currently in the bottom 3. Maybe now we roll. Maybe now we go a little bit earlier. It might be you were considering holding back, waiting 1 more turn. If you're potentially putting a player into kill range, you pull the trigger 1 turn earlier. As we saw there, SCSC, we know they're going to be in a really good spot. Bintium was happy to take this loss. Bintium's aim is just to try finish 5th, 6th place, just get some points on the board.
Yeah, they're really going to have to go hard on a couple of the players, because if you know you have a player like SCSC who's most likely going to be winning out, Bintium was in a pretty comfortable position, but then just dropping down to 64 HP, it gets a little bit scary as they will have to verse each other, and it doesn't look like many of these other boards are able to contend with the GP just yet. I mean, that's just the absolutely dream setup when it comes to artifacts. So we're going to have to see, how can some of these other players survive. It is good to see Dooney Zuni up there, quite a lot of HP as well. So, maybe if SCSC can play for the win out, Dooney Zuni can just bleed slowly for them.
Yeah, I think at this point, SCSC, they'll just be like, okay, don't sack for people. You just play your own game. You don't want a turn where you potentially give the other team a free round because you're trying to make yourself a bit weaker. You're our win-out player. The other 3, it's time to figure out how we can get as many points on the board to get to that 19-point threshold. And potentially with SCSC being on the win-out, they're only going to need 18 to mirror to potentially win this lobby. They're in a really good position.
I also didn't even realize, but he's picked up the portable forge as well. So having that living forge just isn't enough on items to go with. I mean, I'd say it's a little bit more of a risky option, as I do believe that the Prowler's Claw was the last one that was picked up. So that means that the RFC and the Flicker Blades was already secured. He had exactly what he needed for the GP, but maybe he was looking for something for Koboko. I mean, Prowler's Claw, it's fine on the Yasuo. Or maybe he just didn't have many other good options.
Yeah, we don't know exactly what they were offered, and Prowler's Claw, as you said, it's just going to make Yasuo a little bit more of a nuisance. It's just all about CC in that backline. We do see Sao Pimi coming up against LBTC, and Sao Pimi just does have enough, it looks like. So Weibo players, both that are pretty low. Sao Pimi staying alive off the back of that pretty hard transition, but is in a really, really rough spot now, 11 HP.
Yeah, so I said this was going to be a masterclass for disaster class. He's got so many tools to work with. He's able to show up, and he's able to put himself together a really nice board. But he's run out of money here. He needs to buy the Cassandre and the Rise, and it looks like he's going to make his board stronger but weaker at the same time a little bit, having to sell some of his frontline there. But I don't think it really matters when you have the core of your board built up there. It does get the Rise too, but unfortunately isn't going to be doing too much for his board right now. However, with access to the salvage bin and his main carries having the items pretty much done, just Akali needs 1 more component. Then we can start to itemize this Rise and have a triple carry threat.
And only had to sell off that Darius as well, which wasn't doing an awful lot for this board. Is someone that you would attempt, essentially get out of anywhere. So should be in a pretty good position. Has now hit that important point. But 11 HP, there's people in this lobby that could potentially kill you. He is going to be really strong for the next few rounds, but when we have that GP matchup again, that's when we're going to be scary.
And crazy moving, you can just see that has 6 copies of the Katarina with the double dupe augment, which means that it's really, really unfortunate because sitting on only 33 HP, the team leader, as we saw in the previous video, he's going to be trying to keep calm, keeping his team calm. We say, okay, guys, we just need to knock off Sao Pimi, and then if I can go 7th or 6th off the back of this Katarina, then, well, we'll be okay. Looks like we are going to see another position from it.
Yeah, I'm just going to point out as well that Crazy Movement's HP hadn't actually fully updated, so it is 21. Bintium's now 23, so suddenly, a few turns later, Weibo picked up some wins, and now all of a sudden T1 have these 2 players potentially in a rough spot. The difference is for T1, they have 2 players that look like 1-2 is very possible. If you go 1-2, you win the game. It doesn't matter what else happens. So Bintium, Crazy Movement, they just need to pick up a few more points, potentially avoid that 8th place. But yeah, as of now, the HPs have closed in and Weibo have stabilized slightly.
Yep, and we do get a few Reforge coming out here on the sword component, not as favorable, but sitting on potentially 1 life here, we're going to have to get 1 final roll down. and we desperately need to find this Katarina. And that Yuumi is going to cost so much money here, and it's still unlikely to actually hit, so probably going to have to send it all the way down. And on one life, do you sell the Yuumi? Yeah, you probably have to. And still misses. That's incredible. We're going to have to see some of these other players if they're holding onto the Katarinas, because we mentioned this before, the 2-cost reroll line is so risky for situations. And there you go. We can see Tianlong's holding onto a 2-star Katarina on the board, and that's very, very common in a 4v4 that you're going to have a rough time playing reroll.
Yeah, we expected that. Going up against Saopimi on the other side, so it is a team v team matchup. Tianlong should be able to take the loss here. Saopimi needs this win and does have a really strong board for the time being. Tianlong on just a fairly standard line. It's that Star Guardian flex where you're playing around Jin. You don't necessarily go for the full vertical Star Guardian, but Jin is the main carry for that composition, and we know how strong snipers can be.
Yep, as we can see, some very lethal fights coming out here. Bintim is going to be knocked out down there as well, so it's really going to be up to his teammates there. We'll have to get a look at Dooney Zuni soon later to see if he's actually in a position to play for second, because, you know, worst case scenario, if these players are knocked out, we're going to have potentially have to see a 1-2 out of T1, and that's perfectly fine because they've got half of that secured, I think. Yeah,
and it's just crazy, to be honest, Tamira, that how quickly a game can change, because 4 rounds ago, we were thinking, okay, Weibo are in a really rough spot here. Suddenly, T1 are potentially going 7th and 8th. And as you said, that doesn't mean they can't win this game. They do have 2 very, very strong players. But they were just hoping one of them can finish with Saopimi, but Saopimi hit that all-important turn. Everything came online.
Yeah, and the structure of T1 in terms of the game plan they've gone for a team environment looks really, really solid here, because so they've got the protagonist, they've got Dooney Zuni who can save lots of HP, be as healthy as possible, and then bleed out into, you know, 2nd or 3rd position. You've got the win-out player who took a bit more of a gamble going for the Living Forge, really trying to play around some of those risky artifacts, but if you get the ones that enable the GP, then you put yourself in such a good position for only a 2-star. And then having that combination means now it's a lot more breathing room when it comes to some of the other players. They really just need to fight for any sort of placement. They don't need to necessarily play for top 4, just trying to avoid those 8s.
Yeah, crazy move in there, picking up a really big win, also important round, but feels like his days are numbers at this point. Katarina just hasn't arrived. Too many people have been playing that denial game, and we know Crazy Movement has managed to pick up these 2 wins, but in the next few rounds, maybe even next round, will be dropping out.
Yeah, and actually insane that they're sitting there on a 2 streak, I do believe. I mean, the Rakan's definitely doing a lot at the front. I like the augments selection. The first 2 are really, really good for this setup. However, not being able to use the duplicators on towards the Katarina definitely has to hurt a lot. 3-star the Rakan, sure, that's great, but players aren't going to be denying Rakan, they're denying Katarina.
Now, coming up against his teammate here in SCSC, SCSC benched the itemized GP. GP with no items was on this board, very aware that this matchup was possible, potentially even they knew exactly what was coming through, and knew that, okay, we can keep Crazy Moving alive, but Katarina has already died there, so it shows even though SCSC's made himself a lot weaker, still wasn't necessarily the most convincing round. And maybe even Yasuo's going to clean up, which would be a disaster for T1.
Oh no, it actually is looking really, really close. Yasuo, are you able to take out the function? And there's no more damage on the side of Crazy Moving. And despite the fact that they had no GP, Crazy Moving is going to be getting knocked out. And that's really, really, really tough to see. But it goes to show the level of confidence in terms of, oh, I can bench my GP here because I'm winning this game anyway.
Yeah, and unfortunately it didn't work out, and that does mean Bintium's dropped out, Crazy Moving also dropping out as well. So T1 suddenly in a pretty rough spot. We know SCSC is the player that's probably going to be winning this lobby, so all the pressure on Dudizuni now to get into that top 2.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's a couple of players, Tianlong, sitting on a little bit more HP than Dooney as well, so there are multiple players who can rival the second, because that's what they're going to be really chasing. If they can take him out of second place, then there's not really too much more we can do. We do see SCSC actually does have a decent amount of GPs, all those Katarinas before, and it looks like we're only 1 off GP. Okay, so rolling down does hit the Yasuo 3, so that Prowler's Core now is actually going to be coming online. Rolling down a little bit here, not sure how deep we want to go, but I would, you know, be willing to predict that SCSC definitely has a lot of matchups which are going to be Weibo right now.
We see the GP3 does come through there, so it looked like he potentially skipped over one of them. It wasn't the case. The roll down was just a little out of sync there, but GP3 finally arriving.
Yep, going up against Guan. So, you know, standard Soul Fighter line, unfortunately the TG has rolled some pretty defensive options there for Samira. This is the dream scenario for the Mentor GP build, so I'd be very surprised to see anything come even close to it, as we do see at Bramble, Warmog Samira doing her best to stay alive, but the GP has so much attack speed, and that is going to be putting Guan into lethal range, as we will start to see a lot of the Weibo Gaming players fall. all eyes are going to be on Dunizuni, who does pick up a win.
Really important win there for Dunizuni. So close to dropping out. Saupimi, though, is on that win streak. And as you said, the difficult thing now for T1, okay, Dunizuni does have the HP potentially to work with. But Weibo will be doing everything they can. They know SCSC, they're going to lose the matchup. They're going to do everything in their power to just try sneak one of their players. Saupimi is the one that's on the streak at the moment into that top 2.
This is absolutely brutal because Weibo, they pretty much have to decide who's going to be the challenger. Who is the one out of us three, all sitting on all sitting on one life this late into the game. You know, we can sack for each other and send our best contender forward. However, if we send our best contender forward and the matchmaking RNG gives us SCSC, they're going to get squashed like a bug anyway. So it's a really tough decision here, and it looks like we are going to be getting a team kill coming up here. I don't see too many sacking, so maybe they're just playing strongest board. They go, you know what, whoever wins here is the strongest, and they should play for second.
Yeah, and I do think Saupimi is so strong, because this composition, we know how good it is anyway. It's quite expensive, which is sometimes the thing that prevents you getting to it, but bronze for life coming through. We see we've got a +1 as well on the Wraith, so that allows us to maybe flexibly play even more trades. Saupimi should be really strong.
And look at the items. We've gone from some very, very good tempo slams, despite the fact that they were quite low HP, to pretty much getting true BIS. And it goes to show that at a very high level, if you do play around this salvage bin, you can produce boards like this. You might not start with them, but that's actually a better case. You don't want to be starting with these items.
Yeah, it's certainly the case. The slams that came through were just enough to keep us healthy. He didn't actually full streak off the back of the slams. He just winned enough rounds to be able to get to this point where the final turn, hit those 2 stars. We do see SCSC had just sacked around there to Dunizuni. So SCSC lost. There's no way he would have lost to anybody in the lobby unless he was trying to. Dunizuni picked up that win. So Dunizuni, an extra HP pool coming through. And that does mean SCSC knows for the next few rounds will be fighting Weibo, so it can just go full strength.
And that's the perfect scenario for T1. Having the matchmaking, knowing that SCSC is going to be going up against Dunizuni, means that now they have 40 HP, definitely 2 lives, potentially 3, depending on how close the matchups are. And now it's going to be really difficult for Weibo Gaming. They're going to have to get really lucky with the Ghost RNG if they are managing to take out Dunizuni, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, we see SCSC there just trying to get those fruits and snacks coming through for that Kabuko. Coming up against Saupimi, this is the player they want to eliminate. This is the player that could be top 2. If SCSC wins this round, I think that's it for T1.
Yep, and a great showing there from Saupimi, building a beautiful board, but when going up against the absolute nuts on GP, there's nothing you can do. There's so many carries on this board because no one could even rival it. No one was in a position to contest the GP. And you can hear it, the excitement in the background there from T1. They are going to play out the game, but a 1-2 finish is exactly what they needed. They had a 7-8. It looked a bit dicey, but all along they had the HP, and they also had managed to have onto the really good artifacts on GP.
They came in swinging with these big claims that we are here to win this title, and they started off the tough way. They went 7-8 and went, okay, that's fine, we're one of the tournament favourites, we'll just 1-2 this lobby, no problem. And coming in here, they gave themselves a little bit of an uphill battle, but we knew SCSC early on was going to be in that top 2, and really well done from Dunizuni to just tempo off the back of this, get to level 9, and now we're going to see who will be winning this lobby. Let's be honest, is anything taking down this GP?
I don't think so, but both, really good boards, capped out quite highly, despite the fact that, just playing around that Zac to save HP. We do have the Zyra 2-star there into the backline, doing as much as she can, but man, this GP, I don't know if anyone could build a board that could rival this. And, interesting to note that they mentioned the fact that Crazy Moving was a great team leader, a great pickup into their new team, and the fact that he goes out early means that he actually would have been, all eyes in the sky for the remainder of this fight. They orchestrated it perfectly towards the end, saving a little bit of extra HP, just in case things didn't go their way, and it looks like they've secured the victory with flying colors. They had so much leeway, so much extra HP, so much to work with, and it looks like they've just played their mid-game perfectly.
Yeah, as soon as SCSC gave Dunizuni that free round and had that extra life to work with, we knew pretty much then it was a wrap. And as you said, the players that drop out, they have such a big role to play from that point on. They need to keep an eye on what units people should be holding, potentially what denies we can have through, and having Crazy Moving, the team leader, falling out Bintium, the veteran player. Not 2 bad players to have in your ear, and just making sure you're fully focused.
And it was so unfortunate there with Bintum and Crazy Moving getting knocked out relatively early. We saw the Executioner, the Katarina, trying to come full circle, but even with the extra dupes, still couldn't hit it. The players on Weibo did such a great job at denying it, but unfortunately, it looks like they kind of put all their eggs in one basket because they kind of gave up on SCSC. I'm sure there was GPs taken out of the pool, but they knew the 2-star GP was enough. then they have to start denying Yasuo's. Even Udyr 3 was picked up. There's just too much to deal with. And the players are starting to fall like flies in stage 5, so they don't even have the econ to really play full denial there. So it was a really, really tough game to play, but I wonder if the priority is going to be shifted moving forward. If we can just allow someone to play GP, you know, even if the other GP player contests and they don't go top 2 or top 1, it does slow it down a little bit, just a little bit, so they don't have that advantage of HP. Hey, I can sack around here, Dooney, don't worry. I'll lose this one because I'm so far ahead.
Yeah, and SCSC, early on, we knew this was just the win-out player. And as you said, Weibo basically decided there's nothing we can do about that. And to an extent, you understand why. I think they had a good game plan of if we can just knock Dooney out, especially once the T1 players went 7-8, I think the game plan completely shifted to, okay, they can have one win-out player, we just need to deny this one other. So I can see why Weibo, I think they had a solid game plan. Unfortunately, though, both these boards are just so strong. And as you said, even on GP2, it would have been too much. Yasuo 3 coming through with perfect items. And we do see SCSC there picks up the first win, and what a result coming in for T1.
Game number. Going over to T1 here for our match number 1, the first best of 3 on our group stage. What a fantastic showing, playing 4v4 on hard mode.
Yeah, 4v4 on hard mode. We thought this would be a close series. We predicted 2-1s across the board. We didn't think it would be a wipe either way. And 18-18 is as close as it gets, needing that first place to win out. So I think it shows that we're going to be in for a really tight series. I think Weibo, Tamura had a good game plan. It just, unfortunately, the cards didn't fall their way.
Yeah, and I think they showed up. I think we saw with, especially with Salpimi, the board that they were able to construct towards the end showed up why they're here, why people should be paying attention. The boards that they managed to build, the way that they got there, was very well played. However, I would argue that the top 2 players for T1, SCSC, they had things kind of given to them, and they had a very easy directional game plan. But the other teams, they did well to try and rival that.
And this is where we knew that this match was decided, right? When Salpimi goes out in 4th place, which is the win-out player on the side of Weibo, that's when T1 knows, okay, we have a really good shot of winning this game. We have 2 very powerful boards, one centered around tempo and one centered around artifacts to scale throughout the game. Now we know T1 has that winning moment.
Yeah, and Salpimi had a really strong board, but to be honest, the fight wasn't even close, which just shows how far ahead SCSC was. And Salpimi, they needed an extra life to work with to be able to get to that top 2, and they just didn't have it.
And we saw pretty slow augment selections at 2-1, especially when they're prismatic, because it's so important with these players. You have a team of 4, you have a wide range. You have one player click Living Forge. You have one player click that augment, which says, if things go my way, I can actually play for first here. And that's really important. You don't want everyone doing that. You need to have, defense. You need to have control. As we saw with the Zac protagonist, that's perfect control. You need to have a nice balance between all of your 4 players, and T1 did that perfectly.
They sure did. And I know for Weibo, this could be a little bit demoralizing, right? You get a 7-8 position, which is the perfect way to start a game. You knock out your opponent to 7-8, and yet here we are down 0-1 in this first match. But T1, knowing that they can scale any mountain here already early into the tournament, is a great sign for them.
Yeah, as you said, T1 played the game on hard mode, but just getting that win over the line in the first game of the first series, you want to make sure that you've traveled all this way, you've had so much prep time, you just want to get that first win under your belt. And potentially some of the line selection, that Katarina, we could have worked out, unfortunately did not. But now they've got that first win, the pressure's really on Weibo here, they're up against it.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how high they carry their heads, because honestly, I think that was a beautifully played game. They had a really tall mountain to climb, and if you can see here the standings, they're looking at the final boards that were constructed. Is not every game are you going to get a Flicker Blades RFC GP, so that it's hard to to play the win out game when you know that that's there. Not every game you're going to have protagonist 2-1 who's pretty much guaranteed to have 80 HP late into the game and be in a really comfortable position.
And yet, having all of these 3-stars still, while everyone's holding and contesting you, knowing your timings for rolling when people die, and all these different things, SCSC played his line, even though it was a high roll 1, perfectly. So, well done to them. But looking down the scoreboard, we did see a lot of different lines. We did see 2 crew players, which I found was very interesting.
Yeah, I think Tamura mentioned it on the cast, just having somebody contesting that crew line, just knowing that, okay, we can't let someone have this for free. Weibo, it did work out for. They contested that and sent Vintium into 8th place. I think the mistake was not having someone contest GP. I do think moving through the tournament, teams need to be aware that, okay, we need to have somebody contesting these lines. We can't give people a free composition that's really strong. So 2 crew players we might be seeing again and again.
Yeah, I think it was a decent strategy. The fact that they kind of had to forfeit the fact that GP was probably going to be playing out for first. The only problem with that strategy is when you have someone with protagonist who has enough HP to kind of bleed out slowly. So they had a good game plan in theory. It was just a few missing pieces, and I think that they can readjust and bounce back for the next game.
And that's just game number 1. This is a best of 3. These teams will be going up against one another one more time, maybe even 2 more times if we get to that game number 3. But don't go anywhere because game number 2 is just on the other side of this break.
Counting up coins for a soda can, and there's nothing going on, no game plan, no plans. So I'm jumping out the fire, back into the frying pan. I'm trying to disconnect from the stats and the spray tan. Just another piece of data.
Level up your gaming experience with over 8 billion playlists, only on Spotify, the official audio streaming partner for the 2025 Esports World Cup.
This land is calling.
game number 2 of TFT at the Esports World Cup, and we already have a leader in T1. What does Weibo need to do to come back?
I think Weibo's key mistake here, they just can't let this GP line go uncontested. Yes, SCSC had the stronger spot for it. They're in the position to win this lobby, but you can't just let them hit the entire board 3-star for free.
Yeah, so we did see that with the, they were able to go after the crew line. They were, take a punch there and, lose a few placements, but it doesn't matter because we're taking out Bintu in the process. So do you think that that's what they're going to want to do for the GP line?
Yeah, I mean, coming into this, we thought we might even see 2 people on GP per team, but just one in the lobby completely free hit at it. I don't think we'll be seeing that again coming into this.
Yeah, and I doubt it. And I think that Weibo needs to do a better job of getting their win-out player to that spot, right? That is the big thing. If you're able to get that first place, you win all the tiebreakers in 4v4. So working with your team to be like, okay, who can actually win out even after a Fortune roll down, not just from the beginning of the game, knowing who can be in that spot.
Yeah, and we saw Salpimi was that player. They were really, really strong and probably were the second strongest in the lobby. I think would have been able to get ahead of that protagonist player, but just hit on 1 life. So it was 11 HP. At some point was going to fight SCSC. That happened, and then from then the game was over. So they need to at least give 1 or 2 lives more to the players that have the win-out spot.
And when we have things like these artifacts, the players are going to recognize that they can play for first from a very, very early stage. So maybe not playing for a win-out player, maybe playing for HP preservation and having more of your players finish in the top 4 as opposed to just going for that first, because sometimes it's just not possible in a game of TFT.
Yeah, and one of the things that influence that a lot is these encounters, right? When we load into game, we see what kind of lobby we're going to have. Is it high resource? Is it prismatic start? Is it any of these other things that make our game change a little bit more and be unique each time? And so playing around those win conditions, knowing that, hey, I might have a higher cap because we've got more prismatics or have more gold or any of these things, what it might look like. But both these teams are very good at the game of TFT. Now it's about putting it together in a team of 4.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, those encounters there, so many of them give extra resources. Pretty much all this set give you something to accelerate those compositions. So something that may be really good on live and may be able to get you into that top 4. These players know how to deal with those extra resources, and the caps potentially are going to be even higher than you might expect.
And even just the baseline of some of these comps require the extra resources. You talk about being able to cap and get to level 9 off of the back of something like Protagonist. However, even just getting to that Cassante board required so many extra resources, and we only barely hit having to sell some of our frontline to get there.
And here we go with game number 2 of our matchup between T1 and Weibo Gaming at the Esports World Cup.
Yeah, and we are getting into this second game here. We thought it potentially go to three games of this series. I do think that's the case. I think Weibo are going to come back swinging here. But T1 now, they had the big talk before Hantamura. They were confident about coming into this event and picking up that first win, although just barely. They've started off really strong.
And speaking of extra resources, we can see there the crabs at the front. So we're going to be getting a lot of extra gold here. As we can see, 2 frontliners there. The snipers maybe potentially keeping the crew out. However, we have seen only favoritism towards the crew if we have access to those copies of Malphites, as the crew will do a lot of damage from the backline, but it's more important that you have that frontline secured. And actually, SC holding on to all of his units as opposed to making 10 gold, recognizing that he's in a position that he's going to get a lot of gold anyway from these crabs, and is willing to hold on to more outs, because you need to be a little bit more flexible before you pick your lines on 2-1. You are playing in a team.
And there's some really strong pairs here as well. Garen 2 early game is almost unkillable, and early GP coming through there for Tien Long, so no surprise that'll be getting held on to. And it does mean that, like you said, sacrificing the 1 or 2 gold and making 10 potentially, if you're able to put together a streak, that gold comes back instantly. It's so much more important. And
it looks like to be a gold opener. That's 20 gold there sitting for Tianlong, playing around the GP. We're going to sell the units. We're making 30 gold on 2-1. So, and has access to the calculator loss as well. So if we want to lock ourselves into the GP, we can sack stage 2. It doesn't really matter. We're going to be putting ourselves into a really good spot. Has the Caretaker's favor as well, though. We have a lot of gold. Maybe we don't think we need any more gold and might opt into getting some more items, although the comp is usually stuck on level 7.
Yeah, the comp can be stuck on 7 for quite a while, so you're not getting full value there. I think, as we can see, the augments are pretty slow to get picked up here. A lot of talking amongst each other. Who's the player that can potentially 5-streak? Someone that maybe held pairs and didn't make 10, 20, 30. You see a player here that, as you said, Calc Loss could just put you in a position where you're so rich that 3-2 roll down, you're going to be able to hit that GP2 and multiple other things.
And it also has access to the tier, so if maybe someone in his team has a better position to play GP, could actually go into the calculator loss, but actually decides to roll that and now has access to extra items. The replication is available, however, does go with the Caretaker, so this gives a little bit more breathing room, gets access to a double Katarina as well. We didn't see success with Katarina in the last game, but having half of a Hand of Justice there, whilst also being able to push levels, does look quite promising. Although last time Katarina, stuck on level 6 trying to get the 3-star, is that going to be not so favorable with this Caretakers?
And coming through against SCSC on the other side does have that worth the wait, and I believe it's either Rel or Garen, but either way, it's one of that 4 core, that reroll Prodigy line that's so good. Any of them from Worth the Wait is a line that we didn't see last game, but I think will be really strong this time around.
Yep, and we do see a look at some of the other options. Multiple rolls coming out here, so we do have crazy rolling available to that Epoch. So everyone is playing off the back of this extra gold, and they're going to be pushing levels, going to have access to a lot of the rolls. Doesn't really need to use it yet. We have a decently strong board that can kill a few units, but access to the lesser champ dupes. So we've seen previously that playing around the reroll lines is very, very difficult. However, a champion duplicator is very important, a lesser champ duplicator, if you do want to play reroll, because you're not really going to be hitting it naturally, unless like we saw with the GP where they're just completely given up. Yeah,
and the few extra rerolls coming through from Epoch, the extra econ it saves you as well, does potentially, you may think, oh it's an augment that allows me to push levels. It does allow for these reroll lines, and same as we said with Caretakers, you might think, okay, I'm not getting the value till level 8. Again, if you hit quick enough and then you're able to push on, it's just even more power.
Yeah, we can see there a Sunfire as well as a belt. So most likely replication belt being picked up there from Salpimi. Very, very flexible frontline. You can play multiple back-to-front comps, as you never really go wrong with a Warmogs and a Sunfire on your frontline unit anyway. I do believe we did see treasure rolls picked up by someone else, as we saw previously, just a quick flash of their screen, and so that is a very, very strong augment. Player's going to be playing reroll lines and looking for the win out, because you just get so many extra resources, and we're playing on an Econ Galaxy, so it's very easy to invest money into these rerolls.
Yeah, this composition is this augment is so strong. Had the 2 on Smolder as well, so Smolder is something that I think we'll only see if it's really early picked up. But this Smolder Juggernaut line is really good. You do have the potential of a Radiant item coming through that could accelerate it even more so. So LPGZ may be on a line that you won't see too much throughout the day, but this is the one time it could be viable.
Yeah, so Treasure Hunts there actually picked up by him, and the thing about this reroll line is a lot of players, they want to proc the rolls, they want to get access to those chests, but playing around, as you mentioned, the early Smolder means that you are more likely to play into that fast 7 and then using a lot of your rolls on 7. You can roll a little bit on 6 as well to try and increase your tempo. Looking for the standard line might be the Protectors and playing Protector frontline with him as, of course, the backline Smolder carry. But you can go, a little bit more flexible. We've seen a couple of other variations. But something that's interesting to note is that because we're in Scuttle Puddle, we have access to those extra rolls to get to level 7. Otherwise, taking this augment and then playing for fast 7 is very, very difficult in low econ.
Yeah, we see a lot of the time it's potentially something that's paired with one of the 1-cost rerolls, maybe even 2. But this augment's so strong that even if you're not playing a reroll, we still see sometimes people click it when they're going for that fast 8. So as you've said, with the extra econ coming through, it should be really nice for this Smolder line.
Yeah, and a lot of these players are going to be very, very flexible because we had the Econ the Econ opener, which means that we have a lot of money to work with. We can, open, we go into different lines. But on top of that, they only really have one item component to work with, so they're super flexible, which also can be a little bit scary because you want to play into a certain line, you don't know what your opening components are. You might pick something up to play AD, and then you just get dropped a lot of rods on the first couple of neutrals. So we'll have to play a little bit more flexibly, but we did see some players pick up generic item augments, such as the replication belt, because they know that they can play a lot with that.
We do see a lot of the time as well, the slams that come through are things like strikers, things that you can play on pretty much every line. We do see a very interesting +1 here though, Tamira.
Yeah, so this is great to see, the Crystal Gambit. So Bintum most likely probably would have taken the Wandering Trainer, the tower defense, pretty early, letting his team know, hey guys, I'm going to take a gamble. I know my gamble last game didn't go so well. However, if I can get something good here, I can be the player to play for first, and I can put you guys on my back and secure that first place. And what a +1 to get that. So we don't really have the setup for it now. Honestly, quite unfortunate, because even if you don't have that strong board, you can still play Lost Streak with this, but it doesn't look like it's going to be the case. So Bintum's only priority here is on saving HP. Because playing around the Crystal Gambit +1, they do want to get to strongest board and start killing units, getting as much resources and rewards as possible. But that's fine. Bintum has made 50 gold. He can just do that later. He just needs to save a little bit more HP.
Yeah, it is unfortunate to not have at least one of the Crystal Gambit units. You'd expect, okay, maybe for the first few rounds I don't find them, but it is a little unfortunate to have not not had any of them picked up yet, but as you said, Bintium can just look for a 5 loss and then potentially roll on 3-1 to pick up some of those Crystal Gambit units.
Yep, and we do see Dooney Zuni's managed to pick up a GP2 there with the Edge of Night, so he's going to be looking to farming a little bit more gold. However, it does look like he's picked up Max Arcana there towards his Katarina, and Edge of Night, we know a lot of GP players do like to favor it, but the fact that he's holding on to all of these extra units makes me think that he actually is going to pivot potentially back in towards the Katarina. Players have favored the GP, but maybe he's keeping his options open. He does have access to the mech there if he wants to play that as well for strongest board, but he has so much flexibility. Maybe it just comes down to what he hits.
Yeah, has so much flexibility. The only slam being Edge of Night leaves you super flexible, can play either line, is holding the core components of either of them as well, so just holding every unit on the bench. Has so much gold to work with, it's going to have so many rerolls. It makes it difficult for the other team as well, because they can't instantly look at the board and go, we need to deny GP or Katarina. For the time being, it is Scuttle, so they will have the econ to do it. They might need to be holding both until he makes that decision.
Yep, and when playing around the 2-cost reroll, you get so many extra rerolls for fielding those 2 costs, and he has so much money. Pretty much every single player by 2-6 has made 50 gold. They all have lots of money, and they're only going to keep increasing that. We do see over here Salpimi holding on to a couple of the Gangplanks, so not denying anyone on his team just yet, but the replication on towards the Warmogs looking very solid here, and the Bramble Malphite pickup is very, very, iconic, I would say, just because of the way that his ability scales with the armor there, so he's going to be doing a lot of damage, and we do have access to a Ziggs 2 on level 4 whilst playing the reroll.
Ziggs 2, Shen 2, 6 copies of Malphite as well, so in a much better spot than any of our crew players last game, obviously not contested as well. As we had a quick scout around there, the amount of people holding these Crystal Gambit units, there was a swing on a lot of these benches, going even just random Syndras being held, so players very aware of that, but Guan here on this crew line, as you said, will be a big roll down here, I imagine, and is in such a good position to hit pretty early.
Yeah, and is he going to get bench locked, or is he going to have to rip open that anvil relatively quickly? Yes, he will. He has access to a decent amount of frontline and backline. His item components are a little bit more backline heavy there on the side, so he does pick up the Warmogs, which is perfect for the Malphite there. And we're getting so many of these units, quite a deep roll down here, not able to hold on to absolutely everything. Nah is not going to be as high priority because we do want to be getting those crew 3 stars online as possible. And speaking of which, there is the Malphite. Can we move it back in time? Looks like we were going to prioritize leveling a little bit, which is a bit awkward because the Malphite's off there towards the right side. Is the Viego going to be able to wrap and get onto the front line? It looks like it. Oh, it is, and on a 3 streak, that's not what you want to see, but looks like the crew might just have enough damage to deal with the Viego 2. Just doesn't have the setup yet there from Bintim, but interesting pickup there, getting the Crystal Gambit plus Viego.
Yeah, it wasn't the smoothest of positioning there, didn't get that Malphite over, as he said, but the Shen was 2-starred as well in that roll down, so was in a position to just stall for long enough there, and the reroll incident just about avoided. We thought maybe they'd be getting bench locked, but did have to sell off that but as you said, the key hit for this composition is that early Malphite.
We do see Bronze for Life available again, not as strong of a pickup at 3-2. We saw success with it at 4-2 after the pickup, usually just because you can't get as many traits early into the game, but we are going to be getting to quite a high level soon, as picking up just more items, more and more items, that's all we really need. We do see over here Tianlong is going to be playing towards the reroll line. Level 6 rolling down quite deep, is holding on to GPs as well as the Coppercoes, so going to be denying multiple players. But I do believe we saw more flexibility previously by seeing holding on to GP as well as Katarina, but it looks like they're going to be helping themselves but also tearing down the other players by holding on to all of the 2 costs here.
Yeah, selling off a few there. Most importantly, just hitting some of these upgrades. I think just knows that Katarina is so strong through stage 3. Just needed to hit these upgrades around it so Katarina can clean up these fights. LPTZ on the other side, we see the player with that treasure hunt. Already level 7, making 30 gold. Had that early smolder. A striker's coming through, which is just one of the best items in the game, period, right now. Is in a really good position.
And actually didn't opt to slam the item straight away. We are going up against our teammates, so didn't want to be too strong. Made the Guard Breaker, which is one of Katarina's best items, and then the Spark later. Actually slammed the Spark a little bit later, which, it kind of makes sense because I think we do want to start winning a few rounds here with the Katarina. However, I would suggest that smolder position, just based on the augments that were picked up, as well as the fact that he has a lot of econ to work with, is potentially the win-out player. So maybe in team communications, recognizing, hey, look, I know you'd like to win this round, but I'm going to be the player that's playing for top 4. I just need to save a little bit more HP here. Yeah,
certainly the case. And now actually doing a bit more rolling, so after fighting his teammate there, he's deciding to dig a little bit deeper and knows that can pick up a few wins here. And this treasure hunt is just so good. I mean, after 2 stages, it's equal to a gold augment, and then you have more stages even coming through of value. It's so powerful, and as I said there, just getting that extra proc coming through, doing that rolling to unlock one of those chests is just going to scale infinitely at this point, and has one of the best scaling compositions to pair with one of the best scaling augments.
Yeah, and it's only 3-3, and he's able to go to level 7, roll down, hit the Smolter 2, hit the front line. I mentioned that Protectors is often favored as the primary way of playing this comp. However, Juggernauts is perfectly fine as well, especially when we have access to combat augments, picking up that extra healing there. This front line is not going to die anytime soon, and we do have access to the Guardbreaker Slam there, and he is doing the trick where he has the Component Anvil here. So I don't know how much Carousel pick priority he's going to have. It looks like quite a decent amount. He can then rip this Component Anvil before he goes into Carousel, and then he'll be able to get, almost guarantee, a Smolder item. He does have access to a tier there, so if he prioritizes Shojin, then he could have potentially been a bit stronger before, but he was going up against his teammate. He didn't really need to do it then.
Yeah, and Bintium on the other side there does have that Rageblade Viego coming through, really didn't hit these Crystal Gambit units, and is suddenly in a pretty rough spot, to be honest. Like, in 4v4 especially, you don't want someone that's super flexible and can pretty much anything. Does have that item collector and the Rageblade coming through, so you wouldn't imagine it's a Viego game. Could end up throwing on top of Ashe. I think Bintium's the one player on the team that, as of right now, doesn't have any clear direction, and that's never great in 4v4. And
Bintium actually just denying the sword there from the LBTZ. One obviously would have liked to pick up that extra sword, because you can go for the Shojin Slam on Smolder, you can also work towards that IE. I think it's, very crucial to be picking up those swords, but interesting, sometimes the players who are in the weaker positions actually have to play defense. I don't know if Bintium necessarily needed that extra sword, as usually when you're playing towards the Crystal Gambit, the Ashe line, you put a bit more priority on the bow. He does have access to a cloak as well, so sometimes, it would have been a little bit better to go towards the Kraken, but when players can play for win out, sometimes we need to do a little bit of damage control, although I am very worried for Bintium, because he's in a position to play for win out, but you need to win those initial rounds to actually get to a snowball position to then play for win out.
Yeah, and he did finally get that Crystal Gambit in, but hit it pretty late, and he's in a lobby where 4 people are just going to be completely holding Zyra. They're not going to let you get this unit for free if any of them find it before you, and considering he's had to roll a little bit to find some of these units, on the other team, they're going to be level 8 faster than you, they're going to potentially hit that Zyra, so Bintium is in a bit of a spot where, unfortunately, he might be just playing more defense, but he does have the potential to be the win-out player, so it's certainly a unique position to be.
And he did get a really nice wrap there from the Viego, managed to go around all the way to the backline, kill a couple of units, and, Viego does quite well as a 2-star in Stage 3, and look how much gold he has to work with. He's still playing defense. He's holding on to a lot of other units, and he does manage to get his first proc there of the Crystal Gambit. Obviously going to opening that chest, there's no reason to double down when we are trying to play the vertical, and does have access to the Ashe as well. We'll see how he wants to play this, but yes, didn't pick up the Kraken Slayer there, but instead just opting to slam the DB, so he's slamming the DP, denying swords, holding onto the extra Smolder. He's doing his best to try and put his team forward.
Yeah, and does have that 5 online finally, as it said, picking up that fairly early Ashe, so Bintium's maybe the hardest worker on the team right now. He's the player that could potentially be the win-out, could be the one that caps the highest, and he's also playing defense on about 3 different lines. So he's certainly the veteran player, potentially the team captain. He's very busy in this particular lobby.
Yeah, he's got so much to do. I am interested to see, how much of a difference it makes the fact that you have this +1, but it's not actually on a unit. If we do manage to get towards the 7 Crystal Gambit, which is, it's possible if we get the Zyra on the level 8 roll down, having that extra spat to put onto another unit, giving them the extra bonuses from the 7-piece straight is quite nice, but having it on a dummy, not quite as important. But it doesn't matter, as much if we can still build a strong board around this Ashe. This is usually the premier carry. And if we do get towards 7, then you can just carry the Zyra as well, who I'm sure is going to be strong if we can get extra items.
Yeah, it gives him the potential to just splash in some of these more supportive traits. Maybe he has a way of getting strategist on the board, a unit like Jarvan, which can just be really, really important. So, and also, those are units that you really want to deny. So if you end up fitting it into your composition, it adds even more value.
And those are big rolls. We saw the Udyr picked up the double shop there, as well as an Ashe on one of the earlier rolls. So still playing defense, holding on to some of the extra options there. We have a few options here being picked up. Do get a nice fruit there on towards the Ashe, but still, has a lot of gold to work with. But I feel like Bintium might have to start playing a little bit more selfishly here, and is opting to roll during neutrals just because he has so much to do this turn. And sometimes rolling in neutrals, especially when you have lots of extra money, is really good in a 4v4 environment, as we do pick up the Ashe 2 there. So now all we really need to do is sort out our front line, and we're going to be in a really good position to start winning a couple of rounds. Look, if Bintium can win even 2 out of the next 4 rounds, he's going to be getting so many rewards.
Yeah, really early Ash hit here. As I said, managed to pick up them strategists as well, so got 3 strat on the board, managed to pick up a Jarvan, so should be okay for the next few rounds. Bear in mind, we'll be potentially facing one of his teammates who could give him the win. Picking up Kahuna Huna there, one of the best options for Ash. The items are looking good. So all of a sudden, Bintium's spot, considering how late he hit this, doesn't look too bad at all.
I just realized that, you know, it's so much to do, that he has so much to do in one turn, but then he also has to consider, I don't want to be as strong as possible, because what if I burst one of my teammates? And that's going to be the case. We are going up against a Karma too, though, so does have access to the Lotus Augment as well as the Guard Breaker there. So very, very strong there, Stride Breaker for the SCSC. So decently strong board, and I'd say that's a, you know, pretty decent loss to give your teammate there. You don't want to be winning too hard, but also you need to guarantee that you're getting these wins now. Yeah,
and SCSC there could take the hit as well. Bintium, to be honest as well, didn't make himself too weak. He didn't remove any items, so it was just the case that he was too focused on making his board, and the matchup ended up working out pretty well. Checking in here with SCSC, a player that looks like is angling towards this Sorcerer line, but flexing it with Star Guardians off the back of that worth the wait. We didn't see Sorks touched at all in the first game, but this option with Rel being a pretty unkillable front line and a really, really early Karma too, should have a little bit more success.
Yeah, so slightly different variation, as you mentioned, playing around the Star Guardians. Usually what this means is if you have access to the Rel and you're playing Swain as your primary frontline, it's great to get in that Bastion Star Guardian and just boost up the Ahri. But who needs to play around Ahri when you hit a Karma 2 on your initial roll down? So a very, very comfortable position, and effectively has almost a 4-item Karma here, because normally you would go for the JG, but if you have access to the Lotus anyway through your augments, then you're going to be in a very comfortable position. As we do see, no more defense needed for Smolder, because it's 4-2 and that's a Smolder 3.
Yeah, and has the Keepers coming through as well, so even more stall on the front line. Still has extra power coming through from Treasure Hunt, a player that maybe didn't need the support of getting this Smolder 3 this early in the game. Coming up against SCSC here, we do see Smolder actually does drop down, so it's going to be a pretty good loss for SCSC in the end, all things considered. But LPTZ in a really, really strong position now. Just needs a little bit more upgrades on the front line. Leaving himself open to Mundo 3, set 2 would be massive. Those are the things that he just needs to get even more time for Smolder to go crazy in these fights.
Yeah, but it's looking quite scary. Although Bintium can potentially play for the win out, SCSC playing for that, you know, that standard line. You look at the right side of the screen there, you can see all the T1 players, unfortunately, playing out of almost no HP. So it's going to be very, very dicey as we move forward. As we see another Cassante Akali board from Crazy Moving here, really, really well-constructed board, and off the back of the Bronze for Life. So mentioned that it was really powerful at 4-2. Usually players don't like to pick it up as much earlier into the game, but if you know that you're going to be rich enough to do a 4-1, then you can get a lot of value out of it.
Yeah, we know how powerful this can be. You need a lot of items sometimes to make this work. You have those full 2 carries coming through. Even 2-starring a Karma in the backline, something you could potentially 2-star. We see Crazy Moving though, has a copy of Zyra himself. SCSC actually hit Zyra 2 as well, so the potential for Bintium on their own team to find it suddenly becomes a little bit lower.
Unfortunately, Sapimi hasn't hit the Karma and is playing absolutely stellar defense there on towards the GPs. I think I can see 5 copies there on towards the bench. And so you would think, you know, as long as we can kill off Salpini, then we'll be in a good spot, because he's not going to be able to hit his Karma 2, and then the GPs will be back in the pool. But he's sitting at so much HP, it's going to take a long time, and he's most likely going to be making it to stage 5 at this point.
Now, I had noticed when we were going around there, a few players do have access to full duplicators. So there's a few lesser dupes on show, but these full dupes are being held for the entire game. And then some of these legendaries, the likes of Gwen especially, we see Bintium leaving it for SCSE, guarding it almost, so willing to take it if someone in the other team was going to deny, but just making sure SCSE picks that up. So the potential for the full duplicator coming through, an early 2-star Gwen, something like this, it can just absolutely spike your board to a point where you're suddenly the win-out player.
Yeah, and it's great to see the bounce back here from Weibo after a very heartbreaking close loss in the first game of the series, but showing up that, you know, if the cards fall a little bit differently, we can play our strongest version of TFT and put ourselves into a very comfortable position. As you do see here, Guan playing around the crew. We saw the early Malphite there, just off the back of that Bramble augment there is so powerful on Malphite, guaranteeing that you have, you know, enough frontline to stall out. And they just have so many different unique lines, but all have been played very, very, very well. And you can see, look at this Keeper's front line, the last second save. These Juggernauts are not dying.
Yeah, and just keeping an eye on Weibo overall there, just a grand picture thing. Guan coming in off the back of that crew is a really stable composition. Is probably not going to be finishing the bot for. LPTZ just hit the Mundo 3 as well and is in such an incredibly strong position. Saupimi's got HP to work with. They're looking much stronger this time round.
Yeah, and look at the defense that's being played there from Weibo Gaming with the GP. See, Katarina 3 was managed to pick up, we can see there 4 copies of the GP on towards the side, and this is the kind of thing that we expected. We saw last time, not enough GPs were held, clearly. GP3 was managed to pick up, but they just kind of gave up on that line, recognized that they were going first with GP2 anyway. However, now, when GP is not in, the best position to win out, it's going to be full throttle on holding on to as many copies as possible. And it's so hard to play a reroll line. We can see another GP there on towards the bench. And Dooney Zuni, he's done well. He's done well. He's gotten really, really close, but unfortunately does not have access to another duplicator. And he had so many rerolls to work with as well off the back of making 50 gold and having all of those extra rerolls from his augment.
I think that's Trifecta coming through as well, so something that's not really providing too much power for your actual primary carry. Doesn't have stretchy arms as well, which would have stabilized him a little bit, which is maybe why he's so low on HP at this point in the game. Double strike is okay, for the, but it's not the highest cap. If he's able to survive here and manage to get the BIS fruit on top and the BIS GP setup, potentially, but taking the loss there, a big loss to his teammate in Bintium. Dunizuni has 1 turn to hit here.
The only silver lining there is that Bintim is in a position to scale, so him getting an easy matchup against his teammate who's not able to win out, and most likely at this position is going to be going 8th, means that Bintim really does need to be playing for first, and we've seen some very powerful boards from Weibo, and being in Scuttle, a lot of these powerful boards that are able to convert are going to be going level 9, capping out, getting really, really strong boards, so it's going to be up to Bintim to be farming those extra rewards, because that's the only way they're going to be able to outcap these very expensive boards.
We do see here has the Spirit Link Guan, so an augment that is really, really good, especially with this giant Malphite in the front line. The problem is, especially in Scuttle Puddle, Crew's cap is, it's never really a lobby winning composition anywhere, and when you're potentially carrying these 1 costs, until you get to that Ziggs 3 and find a TF. So Guan losing these last 2 rounds, and does have a lot of HP to work with, so he's kind of doing his job, he's going to finish in the middle of the pack, you imagine so, but is on a line where it isn't going to be too strong come the end of this stage.
And I don't even know if there's any GPs left in the pool. We've scouted basically every single Weibo player collectively has over a GP 3-star, probably if you put them all together. And final roll is going to be coming out, and no, unfortunately doesn't quite get there. Does have a very powerful Kobuko. We saw a couple of them getting denied relatively early, but I think the players recognize, look, if we can just take out all the GPs, and that's going to be enough to slow him down. He didn't have anything that screamed win condition, so they really just had to slow him down as opposed to, really make him lose the game entirely. As we do see here, the GP2 going up against the Rakan, and unfortunately is not really going to have enough damage to get towards the backline. The Katarina is stuck on towards the Kobuko there. Kobuko is doing well to CC, but Katarina is going to be able to heal all the way back up to full, and now the 1v1 against GP and Katarina is not even going to be close as all the supporting units come through, and unfortunately GP denied, GP down.
And rolled 1 more time for that power up, tried again for stretchy arms, this time just unflinching, so missed the entire game, never found it, which is obviously a possibility. We've seen it play out in this case. Didn't find the GP3, didn't find the stretchy arms, and GP is now down. And that also frees up a lot of the bench space for some of these players on the other team. They can finally sell these off and start to hold the units they actually want.
We've actually got 2 Sork players, I believe, on some of the other boards, but we saw that Bintim actually managed to pick up 3-star Swain. So Salpimi had a very, very strong HP lead, played around the Karma 1 for quite some time, managed to get to level 9, has a lot of gold to work with, has built a very beautiful board, but no Gwen, no Braum 2, no Karma 2. It's really, really difficult to compete when all of these other units are taken out of the pool. As we go up against we see SCSC, who's managed to hit everything.
Yeah, SCSC had a really early Karma too, and it just meant that that other Sox player was in such a rough position. LPTZ has basically been doing nothing for the past 5 rounds, has just hit everything and is slowly making his way up, has level to 8, is playing some denial, you can see those ashes on the bench, and LPTZ is really, really strong, but we see the power of this sort board when you get to level 9, when you finally get that Gwen online, so powerful, and even though this unkillable Mundo normally would be enough to stall, there's just too much backline access with the sort composition. Smolder went down early, SCSC picks up a big win.
Oh, I was just about to say that all eyes on Crazy moving, but Bintium taking a loss. I thought it was going to be SCSC in a very comfortable position to play for top 2, maybe second, and Bintium could be the one to bring it home, pull out at first, but he's still kind of playing defense. How long does he hold the line?
Has reached that 7, so he's still playing the most defense. He's basically making Ziggs 3 on bench. It's something he could potentially run himself on the board, but all to deny that crew player. And Bintium has been the hardest worker here. If he's able to pick up a win here, it'll be so important. We'll get so many rewards coming through off the Crystal Gambit. just whether or not it'll have enough.
Oh, he's going up against a very, very strong Smolder setup. You see there with all of those all that extra treasure that's been dug up. You got the last second save as well as the keepers. You can see the Mundo is going to be tanking for quite some time, and doesn't look like Swain actually has enough to tank it. And managing to hit that Mundo 3 means that the Ashe is going to get stuck on it, and we just don't have enough shred to get quite through it. Still stuck on level 9 with the Zyra 1, and it's not going to be enough to deal with it. And Ashe does manage to get on towards the Smolder, but unfortunately is not enough. And it looks like that's going to be 3 out for T1, unfortunately. Well, fortunately for us, it looks like we're going to be going to 3 games.
Yeah, we are going to 3 games there. It was really close in the end there for Bintium as well. That Ashe, if you just got onto Smolder that 1 second earlier, that probably would have been the difference. But we heard the reaction there instantly from Weibo. They know they've done their job. They've came back in swinging and sent T1 8-7-6. And now it's a position for Weibo. They're on their victory lap. They get to see which of them can make the strongest board, which of them can win out in this particular lobby. But that will tie the series at 1-1. And we predicted this would be going to 3 games. We did think these were 2 sides that were pretty evenly matched. First game coming in, it was 18-18. It was as close as possible. This time round, Weibo reacting. We're going the distance in this one.
Yeah, and it's such a shame because SCSC's done pretty much exactly what he needed to do for his team. He's played off the back of that early roll 3 and has managed to push levels, play a little bit of defense, and then just get to level 9 and have a very, very strong board. Maybe not play for first, but put himself into that second position. Bintim probably calling out that he was going to be playing for first, and that's exactly what he was going to do. And before he took that second last loss, I was thinking, Crazy moving, unfortunately, most likely going to be going out in 7th, and Dunizuni already out in 8th. This is going to be a really close finishing, but then going up against some of those really, really strong boards enabled by the extra econ from the Scuttle Bottom just means that even, you just couldn't compete with them.
Yeah, and there was the rough spot. We talked about how it depended how quickly Bintium would get to that 7 Crystal Gambit. And unfortunately, SCSC got into a position where he found Zyra 2, and it was around 4-2, I believe. There's no way you're going to pass that over. It's so strong for your board. It did delay, though, your own teammate getting to that 7 Crystal Gambit. And if you got there at the end of stage 4, could have been also different. So an awkward spot to be in. I imagine the comms were going, I can't pass this up. I'm going to be so strong. Bintium probably believed he'd be able to get to the win-out position anyway, but unfortunately the cards didn't fall that way. And we do see Guan slowly whittling their way down to where we expect Crew normally finishes. Does have the TF online, but it's going to be finishing around 4th or 3rd place, which is the uncontested Crew spot. So we saw last time around, Crew was 2-way, didn't have its best potential, but we can see how reliable it is this time around.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see a lot of this treasure hunt. It's such a powerful augment, elevated by the fact that he had extra econ, but I'm sure we'll see it played reroll with the 1 or 2 cost, try and enable some of that treasure a little bit earlier. We do see that Katarina does manage to get on towards the backside there, on towards the Smolder, so, it is possible with a little bit of positioning to take this board down, but the way that they were positioning their board, just keeping that Smolder in safety, meant that when going up against the likes of Ashe was just stuck on that front line. There was just no feasible way to get towards the Smolder, especially when you're not playing around Assassins.
Yeah, and ultimately Weibo in this game never really had somebody that looked in a dire spot. So potentially for Bintium early on, we thought that was the case. But Tianlong was the player that was low down in HP, but they had the clear direction. They found the early Rakan. They were always going for this Katarina line. And they just very clearly had 4 players early on where they knew what they were doing. And I think for T1, especially through stage 3, there was a few players that left themselves a bit more open. The likes of Bintium, we didn't know if he would end up going Crystal Gambit or pivoting off because he found them fairly late. So Weibo just had clear direction, executed it perfectly, and have came in here with a really strong showing. But SCSC, worth noting, strong performer coming into this tournament. The player that, after Bintium with the most crown appearances, had a really good game 1, is the standout player again here for T1. So the player that they're putting all their eggs in the basket of SCSC.
Yep, and I actually did have it wrong. It was Crab Rave, not Scuttlepuddle, so that could have been an interesting way to end the game if we had gone the distance. I am looking forward to casting a game where something is decided or something pivotal. Yeah, some major shift happens, because sometimes it's not their fault. Sometimes you play a back-to-front comp and you just don't have those melee carries online yet, which means that you can't actually you can't take out the Crab, and it could be very, very interesting, especially when you have players who have that HP advantage and they're going to use that to sack for the win-out player, but then they can't afford to anymore because they've lost a life to the Crab.
You might have to give your player a free round so that they can survive the Crab, which would be a weird spot to be in. But we do see Katarina here, just how much success it has against this Crew composition. Just goes over the top, but does actually go down there, so Yuumi will not have enough to clean up here. Crew actually just about really, really close matchup. I thought Katarina was going to clean up for sure. in the end, it was as tight as it could have been, but two compositions, we know how reliable they are. We know they can finish in that top 4.
Yep, and we've only got our final couple of matchups happening here. And just wanted to mention that it did actually opt in towards taking the Caretakers despite playing a reroll line. I think that's something that's interesting to note about this Katarina line is, sure, Katarina 3 is a good carry, but you do want to eventually get to the rest of the Battle Academia, because if you can have a Katarina 3 supported by the Yuumi Leona comp, it's kind of like having standard Yuumi Leona, but just that extra threat. And so maybe Tianlong recognizing, you know, I'm not going to get full value until I get to the final board, but hey, it's Scuttle Puddle or Crabgrave rather. I'm going to get there eventually, and my board's not going to play for win out, or it's not going to be that strong until I get there anyway. So I might be a little bit weaker in the early game, but I do want to get there eventually.
Yeah, and with it being Crabgrave, you almost have to make these higher version caps of these compositions, because as you've said, Yuumi Leona on its own is fine, Katarina on its own is fine, but when you have so many extra resources, it's going to be the position where you need to have basically 2 comps finished, and not just having the Katarina, having the Rakan, 2 reroll units that you wouldn't normally be in a position to grab, and then just finishing it off with a 4-cost composition. You wouldn't be able to do if you didn't have extra resources, and Tianlong realizing this, knowing that, okay, my first augment, not going to get value for quite a while, but once I get there, I have so many units I can itemize.
Yeah, and one thing that I wanted to point out that we haven't seen too much of is any of the Destiny augments, especially in solo queue when taking, you can take all of them, Silver, Gold, Prismatic, Destiny. In a 4v4 setting, it gets a little bit more complicated. However, we've seen that some players are willing to take the gamble first and then wait for their teammates to adjust to what they've decided. So if they take one of these augments, they'll be in a really, really good econ position, and then they can just wait and the teammates can adjust. So we haven't seen any of that yet. Maybe because the first time it was Prismatic, they didn't want to take that risk. Maybe second time on 2-1, they didn't want to take it because they already had plenty of gold. They had a gold opener, they had Crab Ray, they had so much money to work with. Why take a risk when we know we can play for something more safe?
Yeah, those risks didn't need to be taken in that instance. We do see here, at the point for Weibo, they're just determining who's the better matchup, who's the quicker, who can pivot the fastest. All about swapping sides here, and we're just having a little bit of a showdown between the Weibo players to determine maybe who's got the fastest fingers.
And just keeping warm and ready because they know that they have one more game to play, and that is going to be the most important out of the 3. That's going to be deciding the final result for this first best of 3. You see the players picking up, they're still playing the game, they're picking up their items, no one's going for any half components. I don't know, maybe they want to pad their stats, you know, at the end of the tournament, who's finished the best, who's gotten the most firsts in their team, who has the bragging rights internally into the org and can say, hey, I brought us this trophy, I was the one that was getting all the firsts.
Yeah, it's a team game, but in this particular instance, it's all about that personal glory. Which of these players, as you said, can turn to the management and say, hey, reminder, I was the MVP of that series, I was the guy that won that second game, even though the whole team absolutely crushed it and swept T1 aside. Guan here did get to the point with that crew board where you do get that TF2. It did finally hit Ziggs 3 because Bintium was holding almost a complete Ziggs 3 on the bench the whole game. So this is the absolute highest cap version of crew. Whether or not it can compete with the infinite scaling Smolder, we're about to find out.
Yeah, and we saw a very similar setup here where a lot of the damage on the right side was targeting this Mundo, but it just absolutely wouldn't die. And LBTZ had a very, very strong Smolder setup here, is able to get through pretty much anything as long as the Juggernauts can survive long enough, but now has access to the Zyra 2 on the side as well, so lots of damage coming out, but man, this crew board has a lot to work with of its own, and unfortunately the Keeper Shield is not going to be enough, and looks like Guan is going to be able to take him out, and that is going to be the end of the game.
Guan with a double elimination in the end there.
All tied up. All tied up now first. All tied up now is our series between Weibo Gaming and T1. 1-1 here in our best of 3, heading to our 3rd game. This is the perfect way to start off with an exciting series.
Yeah, it certainly is. And for Weibo, they've got to feel pretty good about this, because I think in the first game, T1 had 2 players that ultimately just had such great lines instantly. They had the Artifact GP, they had the Zac player, and you knew these lines were so solid that Weibo couldn't really do anything to stop those. But as we've came into this second series, Weibo have really stepped it up.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great showing from both games. I'm curious to see how momentum plays into this going into the 3rd game. I definitely would be more comfortable in Weibo's position. You'd want to come off the back of a first and, you know, try and get those 2 in a row. But T1, they came out swinging at the start. They told us about how they were going to crush the competition. They talked about their new recruitment with Crazy Moving is able to lift the players up, and he's a very good, strong lead. So let's see if he can actually do that now, because that's what they need.
Well, and they're actually kind of being crushed right now. Weibo does not have a bottom 2 so far, which obviously means that T1 has filled those spots. In this game, it's a 6-7-8, which makes them immediately lose this 4v4 matchup, but Weibo is being much more consistent, having much higher placements on average, and now T1 really needs to figure it out. They identified a win-out player, but again, just didn't work out in their advantage this time.
And I think with T1 as well, they've had players that have had the win-out spots, but they need to play some of these more solid compositions.
Right.
Something where you can just finish 4th. They've not really had players angling those. Everybody's do or die, and you need somebody that's just going to be perfectly stable.
Yeah, it was a really awkward to see when they had 4 of them, I believe it was, somewhere in the middle of the game, or just down at the bottom of the HP standings. As we do get a look at the standings, we can see, you know, who came first wasn't as necessarily that important towards the end, but the crew, very powerful composition if left untouched, and it can finally get to all of the 3 stars, it is able to win lobbies.
And I think most importantly, it's 1, 2, 3, 5, which is just an incredibly big win for Weibo Gaming here in game number 2. But I want to talk a little bit about Bintum. Bintum very much had that start from the beginning. Hey, I have Crystal Gambit +1. That's going to give me a lot of extra resources. I can win this game. And then faces the strongest in the lobby right as he hits and dies out in 7th place.
Yeah, it was in a really rough spot because I don't believe hit Crystal Gambit until 3-1 or 3-2. Didn't find it in stage 2 at all, which when you have the +1, so many of these Crystal Gambit units are cheap. The likes of Vi and Syndra, you just expect to pick up. I wonder if with it being Crab Rave, there was the potential to just roll early, which you wouldn't normally do, knowing you'll get the econ back.
I think one thing that's really important, he didn't have it, and as you mentioned in Crab Rave, is if you start to fall behind a little bit, you're playing Crystal Gambit, you can open, you can dig really deep on 4-1, you can go down to 0 gold, maybe make back up 10, but as long as you're winning those rounds, it's okay. You can't do that in Crab Rave because everyone already has a strong board. The other players, the Sork players, were able to roll down to 20, 30 gold, they had Karma 2, they had Swain 2, and so you're going up against these boards that are already strong enough, and they didn't have to go all the way down to 0, and you don't have that kind of like last stand, do or die, okay, I'm in a bad position, I'm going to send 0, because it doesn't change anything. Everyone already had strong stage 4 boards.
Well, now it is last stand in this matchup for both of our teams. Whoever wins this game moves on in our group stage up to the top end of the bracket. Whoever loses will be in a decider match tomorrow as well. So it is going to be an incredibly exciting day, and we have an incredibly exciting game number 3 right after this break.
Skips a beat and now I'm falling deeper than a fly. I can't control it. Dark against the sky, it's not so black and white. It's like I told him. There's things that I can't fight. I just keep going. I just keep going. In my time, I've been dreaming of a space to really find my place. I wish she'd sing what I had dreamed. Before these darker days, I thought I found my way. Quickly it fades, losing the race, closing the page. In and out, I move myself again. Time moves fast, I feel my heart beating. And now I'm falling, deeper than a fly. I can't control it. Dark against the sky, it's not so black and white. It's like I told him. There's things that I can't fight. I just keep going. I just keep going. I just keep going. I just keep going. Dark against the sky. There's things that I can't fight. I just keep
If all they've been saying is true, there's a wall before your eyes. Tell me, can you see right through? Right through, right through. Down through the wires and the pipelines. We go disconnecting from the city and the skyline. This is the numbers again. The fights, the fear, the fear. This is the numbers again. Counting up coins for a soda can. And there's nothing going on, no game plan, no plans. So I'm jumping out the fire, back into the frying pan.
Welcome back to TFT at the Esports World Cup, where in our first match, we're already going to 3 games. It is 1-1 between Weibo Gaming and T1. Gentlemen, all comes down to this.
We kind of predicted 3 games for this one. We looked at these 2 teams and thought these are really, really strong contenders. But Weibo have looked the better of the 2 so far. As you pointed out, have not yet had a bot 2 finish. And Tamura, T1 have got to make up for that in this next game.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like with T1, they've always got one player kind of at the front, or if they've given the augments the spot, then they can put themselves into a very comfortable position. But as you mentioned, Weibo looking on fire here. I really, really like the Salpini playing around the bronze for life boards, showing up the flex gameplay and being able to really construct these boards. And honestly, I feel like we came into this thinking that the meta would feel a little bit more stale, but we're seeing some, like a wide range of comps because players know that you have to play defense, and that enables some of these other comps to come online.
Yeah, and reminding us about the format, we're currently in the group stage of TFT at EWC, and so our teams will play 1 match today and then 1 match throughout, but this one does not send anyone home. It moves them up to the top of the bracket, or if they lose, down to the bottom, and then you get into those win or go home brackets. You see our stages here. Both teams being played in Group A right now, and it looks like we're getting close to getting in game.
No, we will be, and we've heard the excitement from the players come through. T1 let out a massive roar off that first game. Weibo like so in following it through on the second. So these players, we know how much it means to them. You can see Weibo down the expressions that they're looking pretty confident. They're feeling good after their first 2 games.
Yeah, and that's exactly how T1 would have looked after their first game, but unfortunately bouncing the other way, going the wrong way, and taking a loss is definitely going to hurt, especially in a best of 3 format. But the players have been here. The players of T1, they were here last year, and they know what it feels like to win. They know what it feels like to drop a match, and so it's all about how they can bring that energy in.
And this is going to be one that's going to be exciting. Man. We have the Lulu encounter, trainer golems. I'll leave you guys here with 3 emblems on everybody's board.
And I think CLA is a little bit jealous that he's not actually joining us on the cast for that one, because these games are crazy. It means that already everyone's going to be scouting around and thinking, okay, what line is this person probably playing? Which denies are going to be extra important? Does anybody have something like Crystal Gambit where you have the potential for just these absolute crazy caps? I mean, Tamura, this might be the craziest game we'll get across the entire tournament.
Yeah, this is nuts. We can already see that a Crystal Gambit, and we saw previously Bintim getting the early Crystal Gambit. Unfortunately wasn't able to get it online that early, but already having access to a Syndra there, as we do get a quick scout around to see some of the different options there. We are going to be looking to see who can make the most of it and get in towards those vertical lines. But this makes things so much more complicated. We saw the players doing really well at playing defense now, but now defense becomes a lot more complicated.
And Sniper's Wraith, along with Strategist, which you can fit on pretty much every composition, Jin Mundo's really powerful, and already you've got people thinking, okay, that is a line that's open for me. But as you said, as soon as you have a Crystal Gambit player, they will be keeping that open. It's SCSC here already picking up the copy of the Syndra.
And has access to the Sorcerers as well, so you can even play, just a standard Crystal Gambit opener, lose a couple of matches and then rounds and then go into the Sorcerers as well. Or on the Crystal Gambit side, now you don't even need to pair a Sorcerer to pair with that Swain, who's going to be a solid frontline. Or you can maybe play 4 Sorcerer, splash in a Gwen, because she's another good way to cap your board. Crystal Gambit boards usually getting to level 9 after they get a lot of resources and they stabilize, so that will be very interesting to see. As we do get a Silver Augment selection 2-1, so a few quick rerolls coming out here as, some options they just deem unclickable. So if you're going to be having that communication with your team about what you can and can't do, it's better to get those out of the way.
Yeah, the Silver's coming through here early. Does mean we're less likely to see some of these +2s, which can really elevate some of these compositions. And as you said, just tend to have a little bit lower stakes on the lobby. But we do see here, when you're getting the Zaki augment coming through, when you have +1 Wraith already, I imagine the conversation was going, okay, yes, I have Crystal Gambit, but we know how powerful this composition can be. Surely from this spot we must be playing it.
Yeah, and already has access to, the Zac 2 and a little bit of extra damage coming out there from the back line. It'll be interesting to see how much defense these other players are willing to play, because we've seen a lot of 2 costs being hold, but how much can they really deny the 1 cost here? Because he's going to be rolling down relatively early, and it's very, very important that you make your breakpoints. So holding on to extra copies of Zac in the early game, if it means you're missing out on Econ's, not usually worth it.
Yeah, as you've said, makes it extra difficult to deny. Does get the over 9,000 coming through as well, so one of the best units for it. You value both the AP, any of the defensive statistics, anything coming through for this Zac is going to be pretty good. So I think over 9,000 here, not often picked up. You have to have something like an early Smolder, early Viego, but with this Zaki augment, really solid pickup.
Yep. And we do get a look at that makes sense. Okay, taking the branching out when playing around. Honestly, this looked to be a relatively stock standard Qianlong, stock standard line. So taking the branching out here, a bit of a gamble, because you already had the Juggernaut and the Soul Fighter, which makes perfect sense. When you're playing around the vertical Soul Fighters, you want those Juggernauts in anyway. You can probably quite easily fit in 4 Juggernaut, or you can even drop out of the Neferi if you feel that you have better units to play. And then the Duelist, that's great, because you can just play the Viego. Viego, getting a little bit of extra items, will do a lot of damage if you're playing around the vertical Soul Fighter. And something else that's interesting to note is that if we are playing around this vertical Soul Fighter and we get the board online relatively early, it's one of the easier prismatic trades, I would say, to get towards.
Probably the easiest. I think some of the others are just so difficult. And in 4v4 especially, you can guarantee wins. So if it gets late enough in the game where you have somebody that's 8 out of 10 wins on that Soul Fighter, they're hunting for the prismatic. In 4v4, that's almost guaranteed. You're going to get those 2 matchups against your teammate. So I'm surprised by the risk, as you've said, because you feel like this is a pretty standard line. Does allow you to still go for Soul Fighter, though. It's not the end of the world if you're playing essentially down a Silver Augment. And getting 8 Soul Fighter without needing to find a Gwen at 4-1, really important.
Yeah, and with that Crystal Gambit, if it doesn't tie in well to the Soul Fighter, which I don't believe it does, maybe we can get a Reforge later. There's always a chance you can get that dropped as well. But I think potentially at this position, Silver, it's not a huge gamble. Maybe we're just trying to play for that guaranteed win. Because if we got Soul Fighter +2, then we know that 8 could come online very, very quickly. And as you said, it is probably the easiest one to get. We do have a player going AFK on the world stage here. And as we get another look at the map fight, you mentioned the Wraith Sniper is very, very powerful. But something else that's interesting to note is that in this new set, or I do believe it was introduced towards the end of last set, is that some of the emblems actually give special bonuses. Yeah. I don't know all of them off the top of my head, to be honest, but I know that the Strategist one gives attack speed. So later into the game, when you're playing around these snipers, which benefit hugely from it, you can backline your dummy, it'll have a little bit of extra range, and it'll give your team a lot of extra damage.
Yeah, this is just one of the most solid all-round dummies. The Wraith Sniper overlap is a lot. Strategist, as you said, the emblem's good on its own, but then you can just splash a second Strategist in there. You can run a unit like Jarvan, which, to be honest, you would love on every board. So really in a strong position. And as you said, Tianlong here still will play that Soulfighter line. We just had a quick glance at them, picking up those first 3 wins. But a player to keep an eye out for a potential Reforge later on.
And did only have access to some of the 1-stars on their board. Soul Fighters is a comp that everyone can do a lot of damage, so it's important that you're holding on to as many pairs as possible. As getting that Callista 2-star is a very sure way to be able to get to level 8 if you have enough frontline, and then of course getting towards the Samira. The comp can feel a little bit awkward if you don't have everyone upgraded. You might have to do a little bit of rolling earlier into the game, because it's important that you're winning some of those rounds, because you need a lot of money and a lot of HP if you're going to be strong enough to capitalize on playing towards that Prismatic.
Picking up an early Xin Zhao will certainly help with that. And as you said, a lot of these units do surprisingly output quite a bit of damage. Even the likes of Nefiri early on can help you kill a unit. So, but a really strong position there. Picking up 4 wins and then getting the Xin Zhao upgrade. If you can find that 6th Soul Fighter anytime soon, in a really, really strong position. But Sao Pimi on the other side here, also a player that had picked up that early win streak off the back of that Zac. Sunfire coming down, which is just always going to be fairly reliable, and is in a really strong position as well. And
he's actually having to play around a tank variant of the Zac, just in the early game potentially, because we are sitting on 100 HP, so not going to get any carousel priority. And you can see that their teammate Tao Long in second as well, so they lost the coin flip there with the pick priority against Dooney Zuni, meaning that nothing's going to be left there. And so, you know, we can play around a tank Zac, but hopefully eventually we can start to get some of those more damage-orientated items online. As we saw previously, it looked really strong when playing around that JG Hodge combo.
Yeah, could have just held off on the Gargoyle Slam a little bit there just to allow your teammate to kill a couple more units, but Tianlong's in such a strong position that maybe already thinking this is someone that can 10 streak. But a player here, GP, stretchy arms already. We saw the GP player last time round, completely missed it all the way through. 5-1 the last Hail Mary attempt for it and didn't find it, but here early already picked up.
And something interesting to note is that they actually had access to some really other good Battle Academia and Bastion, and another player's got it as well. Bintium can pretty much ignore that Supreme Cells, but these are 2 very well tailored options to go with on your trainer golem, and what better way to capitalize that than on playing around the Garen Hero Augment. As we can see here, we have so many. Was that 5 copies of Garen already?
Yeah, I mean, this dummy is just Garen, and then straight away loaded in Garen Hero Augment on top of that. The composition with Leona later on, so easy to splash in a 4th Bastion or just go for the vertical Academia. So in such a strong position, and I mean, Supreme Cells, it's fine to ignore it. I think a general rule with a lot of these totems and these dummies coming through, you feel really good about 2 if you get 2 of them. If 1 is okay, if you completely miss, obviously it's a disaster. But you're always happy to give up a 3rd. So having 2 that fit a comp perfectly is just perfect spot to be in. And
isn't even slamming his items. He has so much flexibility that he's win streaking while staying on level 4, making 30 gold, going up against oppositions, but still doesn't even matter. If we can pick up a nice 3 streak, then we don't have to slam any items. And he's opting to roll a little bit here, potentially knowing that other players might start to grief a little bit. Look, might miss out on a couple of gold of Econ, but we're definitely going to be hyper rolling in this position anyway. It does pick up 1 more Garen copy there, and wow, rolling really deep. I think Bintim's in a position where he knows he wants to hyper roll.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like we're going to be getting any Econ interest here. We just don't want to get denied.
Well, there's hyper rolling, and then there's Giga hyper rolling. We went even earlier here, and interestingly, the units he was picking up on the roll down, he was like, okay, I'll buy these Zacs just in case I can deny a little bit longer. As he said, just wants to get this Garen online as quickly as possible and then can transition this into an even bigger streak. Yeah,
Bintim really is that player who will play for the team. We've seen every time we scout Bintim's board, he's denying as many units as possible, and it makes sense. Look, Salpini, he's rolled late. He's rolled way too late. And look, he's got 2 copies of Garen, so he's able to deny some, but he only has, 4 copies of Zac because Bintim's done such a good job of playing defense.
Yeah, and Salpimi here is now in a position where we'll, I guess, just be slow rolling throughout stage 3 and just hoping it arrives in decent time. Items, not great coming through. You need AP for this Zac. So for the time being, it'll just be kind of running some tank items on top of it, hoping to kill a few units. Bintium on the other side. We talked about him being the team captain and potentially the star player. I think they've really lent into SCSCs being the person that they're maybe more confident in capping out their board, and Bintium really has taken this veteran role on and taking the hits for the team while also playing a really good line himself.
And Salpimi holding off from slamming because he's going up against his teammate. Mentioned you do need the AP items. Does have access to 2 gloves, so we've seen Hodge and JG being quite common on this variant of the Zac. So maybe with a lucky Reforge here is holding out because, you know, we never really know what you're going to get at your 3-2 augments. But 1 lucky Reforge, 1 carousel pick priority, and we could be in a good position.
Yeah, as you've said, the glove may be the highest value right now in the game in general. JG Strikers or JG Hodge on top of most units is base. So in a really, really good position, potentially if you can get that online. We'll be interested to see when Bintium does hit, because he's committed so much gold to rolling. He kind of needs to see, we need to see that Garen 3 popping up within the next round or 2.
Yeah, so just denying all of the Zacs and then also playing towards his own Garen 3 star, of course. But I think that's really well done from Bintium. I hope it works out for him because I think it was a very smart play. We were looking at it going, oh, he doesn't really care about his gold. He's rolling all of it. But it makes so much more sense when you look at the full picture of a 4v4 environment. As we do see, we're only 2 off and, you know, relatively healthy, but has managed to pick up a little bit more gold, has Raining with gold. Now, this is actually a really nice pickup because Raining with gold, usually not as good, you know, not as good when you have lots of econ. It's really good when you have no econ. It's great on 2-1 because you can start to build up your econ intervals as you're getting that +1 every single turn as well. So the fact that he's playing defense means that this is a really nice pickup. I do worry though it's going to make it harder for him to kind of win out if he doesn't hit this Garen 3 early because he's lacking combat.
Yeah, we saw going up against the Weibo player there that was also on Academia lines, so maybe another reason why he rolled early. He thought there was going to be so many people holding Garens, not even holding Garens, just running a Garen on the board for the whole game. So maybe that was a factor as well in just deciding to roll down even sooner. But as you said, does need to hit in the next couple of rounds, has committed really deep and taken a big loss there. Bintium potentially put himself in a position again where maybe the defense just did a little bit too hard.
Yeah, and let's see, how much more does he really want to roll here? Because he can get stronger with the Garen, but if he's 2 off, then the incentive to drop below 10 gold is definitely a lot lower. And as I say that, he does manage to find that. So does unfortunately have to hold on to a lot of these other Battle Academia units, which means that he can't roll too deep here, but at least he's in an okay position where hopefully it'll come online soon. And he's playing really good defense there with the Zacs. If the Zac 3 does ever come out, then he can sell that and he'll actually make a lot more money.
Yeah, exactly. It's the case. He's just denying it for the time being, but potentially is going to be able to free up those funds later on. And we saw the other Academia player had the red buff spark coming through, so probably just leaning towards that more standard Yuumi line. So maybe just thinking as well, if I can roll and find an early Yuumi or an early Leona, which often we see with these reroll players when they're rolling on 5 or 6, they'll just pick up one of them, and that can just slow down the other player as well.
Yeah, as you can see there, SCSC playing very, very strong tempo off the back of the patient rolls, pretty much full open, and then has managed to build himself a good board. But this is a really, really well-constructed board here from Dunizuni. Yeah. We said playing around the snipers, but actually has slammed some AP items because he knows that it's strongest board, and maybe he wants to play in towards more of a strategist line.
Yeah, he leaves himself quite open there. Obviously, potentially something where you can just go towards some of these legendary units, and the Sniper's Wraith allows you to just run a Varus on the board in the late game, and you're activating some of your traits. So we haven't seen too much like Fast 9 flex, but maybe one of the players that, when you look at his items, is in the position to do so. Yeah,
and if you get something like Bronze for Life, it is 4-2 augment, then just playing that random Varus. Varus is one of those units that if you throw into your board and he has a couple of utility items, such as the Morello there, can do so much damage without really needing too much setup. As long as you have enough frontline, he's going to be doing a lot of splash damage, even as a 1-star. We've seen some of these Cassante boards, they itemize the Akali, they itemize the Cassante, any leftover items from the carousel, if they have enough frontline, will just go in towards the Varus, and he'll actually pop off and do a lot of damage.
Yeah, Dunizuni really can play almost anything from this spot, which every set there's always at some point the position where the Fast 9 legendary soup thing is a viable option. And we may be seeing the one scenario where either Fast 8 or Fast 9 is the case, but Dunizuni is certainly setting the tempo, Bintium here falling behind slightly.
Yeah, so we'll have to see how well he can do there. I do believe that we got to see the matchups there of Bintium. Looks like he wasn't rolling because I think he was actually guaranteed to verse all of his teammates there. That's what it looks like. So he'll be calling that out in communication, saying, guys, you know, I have a decently strong board, but maybe I can kill a few more units here because I'm in a bit of a awkward position. And yep, does go up against SCSC. You can see is going to have the Kai'Sa on towards the Garen, which is either a good or a bad thing, because if we can't kill the Garen, it means we're going to kill almost nothing, and that looks to be the case. So a little bit of a miscommunication there if Bintium knew that he had high likelihood of going up against his teammates. Doesn't look like they're positioned in a good spot to capitalize off that information.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that was the case. Obviously, we don't know exactly how the positioning for the other potential matchups did line up, so I think Bintium needed that win. We saw over 80 gold coming through on the flip side and off the back of that magic roll, so a player that could take the hit, whereas Bintium, every life right now is important. And staying at 80 HP, considering how deep he rolled and didn't 3-star, he has managed to really stabilize off the back of that. As I said, he's running out of time almost to find this Garen.
As we do see Syndra board here playing off the Rising Chaos, something that we haven't actually had the pleasure of mentioning is a very, very powerful pickup there for the Syndra, especially when you have access to a blue buff. Blighting Jewel means that it's just going to be continuously casting, and it is one of those fruits that you can rip on 2-1. If you have a 2-star Syndra in frontline, it's something that you can take until level 8. Yeah,
and interesting, it was one of our AFK players as well, so they basically transitioned into a very stable board after that point, so able to start winning rounds off the back of that. As you said, it's normally something you see holding those 1 costs from 2-1, able to still find the Syndra pretty early, and those items are just so good. Potentially you can play Karma off the back of it, you could even look at Yumi, a few different AP carries can itemize.
Wait, this is high-key genius. The Nico somehow managed to zoom its way unstoppable all the way into the background, which means that the snipers on Doonizuni's board are going to have maximum value. Unfortunately, it is going up against his teammate, but I like the idea. I wonder if we're going to see more of that, because that was either very lucky or genius positioning.
I've seen it before. Unstoppable can actually fix a lot of these snipers' value and can get that a little bit extra. And T1 won't be too disheartened by that. Doonizuni is their player. They wanted to get this 10 streak. Yes, it could have been a better loss for Bintium, but is still... Bintium, I think, has won maybe 1 or 2 more rounds more than he would have expected to, so is still healthy enough. And Doonizuni now putting together a 10 streak. We haven't seen a player streak this much in the first 2 games, so certainly really far ahead on tempo.
Yeah, so Doonizuni in a amazing position. I don't know if his dummy is necessarily the one that will allow him to play for first, but he's definitely going to have the HP to get there. A little bit awkward there with Bintium because he's had to play so much defense. Feel like he's going to fall a little bit behind on tempo, especially as we saw other players playing towards that Battle Academia, and will want to pick up copies of Yumi and Leona, so it's going to be harder to cap. And then if we look at the other 2 T1 players, SCSC and Crazy Moving, do not have much HP to work with.
Yeah, and checking in here with Doonizuni, a player that definitely has a lot more flexibility in how he can play that out. We know how strong just Jin 2 is alone. Checking back in here with Bintium, though, however, finally gets that Garen 3, which I'm pretty sure he was getting to a point where he was worried he maybe wouldn't hit. There was so much defense going on the other side. So just finally getting that out of the way and allowing you to push on and hopefully find Leona, hopefully find that Yumi, will just be such a relief.
And we talked about that SCSC has low HP. However, similar to how Bintium had the Crystal Gambit +1, we know that it is potential, you can play for first, but is playing off the back of Star Guardian, so playing an AP variant of it. So it'll be interesting to see, because we did see that the Ashe got stuck on a lot of the front lines, and that's inevitably what caused Bintium's downfall, not being able to kill off some of those juggernauts like Mundo. But with the AP board, you have a lot more spread damage from the back line.
And checking in here with our player on the Blighting Jewel, Karma, absolutely the best user of it. LPTZ finding an early copy, coming in here up against the Windstreaker. Doonizuni with new Bis Jin just being splashed there, just getting anything he can on top. But LPTZ has rolled down really deep, so it will be the end. Potentially no, actually Doonizuni just keeps that streak alive, so LPTZ, considering how much he'd committed, would have really liked to win that round, but unfortunately the front line's just not quite good enough yet, still itemizing that cannon.
Yeah, and as you said, committed a lot, but didn't actually get the board online, ran out of money, went, okay, great, invested, 4-2, perfect. This is exactly what I need to bring back my tempo. Now I can send all my gold. Isn't going to be getting any value out of the extra free rolls that invested typically gives. Just using that as a boost of econ, and is honestly rolling quite deep here, but hasn't really found much. Does have access to the Karma pair, but we still have a long way to go in order to get that online. I do like the frontline pickups though. Jarvan too is looking very, very solid. We just desperately need that Karma too, and the Rise is just a bit of a waste of money when you're playing vertical sorcerers.
Rise is really, really expensive and doesn't have the items to go on top of it. These items are just perfect for Karma. Potentially will skip over the top. As we saw, Kennen 2 was the frontline last time around. Finally manages to get that Swain upgrade. As you said, the Jarvan coming through does upgrade the Rise, so is confident they can find this 1 extra Karma, and has made that decision. I don't think he's in a position to panic too much. Isn't too low on HP. I think potentially if you're 1 or 2 lives here, then you would think, okay, we'll skip over this Rise. But coming up against this Garen here, who has just spiked.
I wonder if it's because he's actually in the lowest position in terms of HP for his team. So his job right now is really just, okay, we just need Crazy Moving or SCSC to go out. SCSC in a really good spot. If he manages to hit the entire board, maybe he's winning out. So they're just in communications with him, say, okay, you took invested, you're not winning this game, you're in an okay position, but we really just need you to go 7th here, send Crazy moving 8th, and then we'll be in a good position to play to win out this entire 4v4.
And Dooney Zuni here, that TF getting itemized, really, really strong. Another flexible augment in Ascension, just hasn't restricted him to playing any one thing. Is rolling quite deep here on level 8 just to get a board together, but look how flexible he's playing this. He's just, TF's gone now, it was just in there for the 1 round. He's switching carries every other round. Is leaning towards this all-out Akali line, though, based on the units that are getting picked up.
And now that we get a look at Crazy Moving's board, I can definitely see why other players, you can see why LBTZ is being so aggressive with his rolls. They've both taken invested. They both have sent it for Karma 2, and they've both gotten stuck on Karma pair. So it's just going to be a matter of who has the better front line. And it looks like, unfortunately for Crazy Moving, he's going to be knocked down to one life potentially, yet 2 HP, so he's definitely in full lethal range now. And most of the Karma is going to be out of the pool at this point.
And it's a similar spot for T1 here. We've seen it before. They have a player that can potentially win the lobby, but they have 2 people facing down 7-8. And in the first 2 games, yes, they just got away with it the first time round. Second game, it cost them massively. And ultimately, if you 3 series in a row have the 2 people in the bottom 2 places, your chances of winning are so incredibly low. We'll see if either of them are able to manage to transition this into a win-out spot. But HP-wise, once again, it's not looking good.
Yep, and it looks like SCSC unfortunately took a loss there. So sitting at 9 HP, potentially can play for first, but it's a tall mountain to climb, and I feel like you're going to need at least like a Zyra 2 or something to really start winning these rounds. And the crazy part is that it's only stage 4. You usually would think, oh, okay, stage 4, that's fine, I can build a decently strong board. Oh, it's just the front line that's lacking, isn't it? We've got most of the back line online. We've got the Star Guardian board, and unfortunately has had to pivot out of the Crystal Gambit, which means that SCSC isn't even in a position to play for first, I would say. So I don't really know what T1 can do from this position, because it looks like we have 3 players who are pretty much can't play for anything more than a 5th, I'd say.
Yeah, Crazy Moving here on this Karma line. There's another player in the lobby that's just playing the same board as you, but is much stronger, has the artifact to come through. So you're going to lose that mirror potentially. And as you said, Star Guardian's normally just fairly reliable. It's a solid composition. But if you haven't been able to pick up wins at the start of Stage 4, which is really when it's at its best, you're not going to be able to cap anywhere close to the other people. We do see Crazy Moving picks up a really big win here on Guan. There's actually a lot of damage down on top of that. And SCSC here is also going to be staying alive. So for the time being, they're both clinging to life. Full
calm and collected from Bintium there, going up against his teammate SCSC. Yeah. And didn't even really sack his board too hard. I was thinking, oh, this is a bit risky. You know, you could kill off your teammate here, but hanging on by a thread, I guess Bintium doesn't even have much HP to work with as well. So if he didn't go up against his teammate and he was sacking rounds before, then he'd be in a very, very bad position. We do have Dooney Zuni still winning rounds, and off the back of TF as well. So that means that he can scale really, really well into the late game. You don't usually get to be in a position this fortunate where you can scale as far as Dooney Zuni is going to be able to go. The only problem is, can we get anyone else up into the top 4?
I think Dooney Zuni actually pivoted off into the Akali line, and we see here a really good matchup at Crazy Movie. Dooney Zuni has benched those carries. Both those powered up units are on the bench. It should be a win on SCSC's side. Crazy Moving here coming up against the Garen, which we've seen since it's been hit has not been performing too well, but Garen is tanky enough to take a hit there, but unfortunately does fall down. And T1 expertly done on the flip side. Dooney knowing that I can take this hit, I'm 100 HP. Crazy Moving picking up a really big win. So suddenly Bintium though dropping down, so they do have 3 people potentially in elimination range, and everybody on Weibo's side at least has another life to work with.
Yeah, Weibo has so much HP to work with, and Dooney Zuni not taking any chances, benching multiple carries, just guaranteeing that. But unfortunately, the fact that they were able to play that one-on-one against each other meant that Weibo was doing the exact same thing, and I'm sure they would have positioned their boards in a way that they're not taking out too heavy losses. So they're in a very comfortable position now. It really just comes down to, I think T1 need to figure out who is their player that can shine and push to the final of this game.
And Bintium in the last 2 rounds for SCSC and Crazy Moving, so lost to both the teammates, does keep them alive, but has put himself in a position where he's probably going to be going bot 4. Would have to hope to find Yumi here on the roll down and Leona 2-star. A lot of these units have been held, a player that you can pretty easily deny, and we know there's another player on that Academia line. So fortunately for Bintium, losing out to his teammates there, his teammates might have a better spot, but Bintium, another player that's played so much defense in all 3 of these games, but just needs better placements himself. And now we have our 2 players once again in elimination range. And now they'll likely be on up against some of the Weibo players. They've fought their own team multiple times already.
Yep, we see Crazy Moving going up against an all-out Cassante, but only has the 1-star there, with STSC on the other side going up against a very strong Sork board. And is that Gwen 2 on the other side? I do believe it is. So the invested player, despite spending a lot of money on 8, has managed to get to the 2-star 5 cost, and looks like the Gwen Sorceress is going to be able to take him out. And looks like Sorcerers are doing well on both sides.
Yeah, on the other side, coming up against that Zac player who just never found the AP items. It is Tank Zac with the hero augment, just not able to do anything at all there. It was a really convincing win from Crazy Moving. So potentially the Zac player not going to be capping out anywhere near as high as we have seen it in the past. Crazy Moving picking up a big win there. Bintium importantly got a win. I think Vod maybe went up against Dunizuni on the other side there, because I couldn't see Bintium actually picking up a win against any of the Weibo players if they were full strength.
But LBTZ managing to pick up the Gwen 2, despite the fact that they're on level 8, means that it's going to be very, very hard for Crazy Moving to really do anything in this game. He's kind of capped. He's stuck on level 8. Bintim's already sacrificed as much HP as he had to be able to give to his teammates. He does have access to the Garen here, but he's going to be going up against a very strong Sork board. And you can see these Sorcerers are positioned on the left side, so they're going to be absolutely blowing up all of the front line there. And now it's going to be up towards the Garen, who doesn't really have the tanky stats to deal with so many Sorcerers at once. And it looks like Bintim is going to be taking a loss here and is going to be knocked out. Is Crazy Moving still alive? I do believe he is.
Crazy Moving has won one more round here, so is sitting at 1 life and is in a position again now. T1 have to 1-2. They've been in this position before. They did manage to pull it off, but Crazy Moving has to completely win out from this spot. Dunizuni has to essentially assemble himself a top 2 board. And Weibo just consistent again. They've not bot 2'd in any of these games, and T1 came in here swinging, and they still have a chance here, and we know they can do it, but when you're giving yourself the hardest way to win a series, you really are up against it.
Yeah, and I wonder if people are actually playing defense on towards this Jace here, because this is a slightly more unconventional line, playing around the Caitlyn and the Jace. The Jace doesn't even have 3 items, but this is another way to play Battle Academia off the Chaotic Evolution, and has access to the extra gold. But it would take a miracle for Crazy Moving to win out from his position, because he just doesn't have the resources. But he's doing okay for now.
He is on a win streak there. Going back to the Jace Caitlyn player, notice Shadow Clone on top of Caitlyn. You're never going to be taking too many bad losses. Caitlyn's always going to snipe something in the back line, at least kill a unit. Sometimes you see these get stuck on a big tank and not kill anything. That Caitlyn Jace board's at least going to pick up a few kills every time, and just again, we both had a player that's playing a 6th or 5th place composition. They know that maybe they're not going to get denied on it too much because it's not a win-out spot, but it's solid, it's reliable, and it's going to get them some points on the board. As you said, Crazy Moving is on that win streak. Dunizuni is still healthy enough to get in that top 2. LBTZ versus Crazy Moving will be the big matchup whenever it happens.
Yeah, we just see Guan actually denying the Gwen. So not only is there 3 Gwens out on another player's board, but we're taking all of the Gwens out. So the only real hope for Crazy Moving here is getting to level 9 and then getting to that Gwen 2. And then, you know, if we get there, then the board is looking absolutely solid. We roll some slightly better items here on towards the Rakan, and then maybe we can actually play for first. And Dunizuni has enough HP that maybe he can survive to second. But I think as soon as we start to take a couple of these Gwens out of the pool, as you can see there, LBTZ is holding on to one as well. There's just so many out of the pool now, it's hard to cap out with Sorks.
It feels like LBTZ in the mirror as well is just the better version of the same composition, has that artifact coming online, and does have that Gwen 2 coming through, so you'd imagine that would be the end of the road for Crazy Moving. See here, coming up against the all-out player, and the all-out Cassante was on the right side there, did get on top of that Gwen early, but the Edge of the Night just providing so much value. Crazy Moving though, will he just be able to stay alive here? Just barely picking up that win. Saupimi drops down to 1 life as well.
So it's looking really, really close. Honestly, I thought this was going to be absolutely over, for sure. We had 2 players from T1 out 7-8. I thought Crazy Moving, like, everyone else had so much HP. There's no way we get down towards it. Now looking at it, it's looking kind of close. The only thing that I would say is a little bit scary is that not only does LBTZ have 41 HP to work with, but they're sitting on a win streak as well. You can see them on fire.
I'm curious about our Soulfighter player, about how close they were potentially to that quest at any point. I know they've just been stumbling along, picking up wins here and there. We touched on it at the beginning that potentially in 4v4 you have an even better chance. Saupimi here,
full sacking.
That there is no room in the top 4 for him, and is willing to give the round over to the Soulfighter player especially as well, so another stack coming through, something we'll have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and if they can guarantee that they get the Soul Fighter proccing as well, and it denies the first place, then they're pretty much guaranteed they've pretty much guaranteed this win as well. So definitely the right call there, as it didn't look like the Zac Cassante board was winning out or going to be that strong anyway. But having 2 players in Weibo go out in 5-6 does make this a little bit more scary. And Dooney Zuni is actually on 26 HP, so LBTZ had a very, very strong board, but to take a loss.
And LBTZ's did actually lose the streak there, so Crazy Moving showing that they are potentially the player that's the strongest in the lobby and does have the ability for Dooney Zuni to take the hit when they match up against each other again, which is going to be really, really helpful. So T1 do have a chance. Maybe this is their comfort zone. 7-8 every game, okay, can we top 2 this lobby? And it's possible. And
this is a really, really strong comp. We've seen previously playing around the Akali and the Cassante only really lost out to the augment or the artifact enabled GP. It's just a board that you really can't beat. So T1 actually have done very, very well here, and it looks like they're gonna have a chance to bring it home. But Jianlong, we can see that the 8th Soul Fighter does have a very, very strong setup. Has got everyone, and the Lee Sin 2 comes online at the end as well. But we talked about this before, Crazy Moving is able to get to level 9, but there's no more Gwens in the pool.
And the Soul Fighter player is the potential out. We don't know how close they are. If they're 1 or 2 away, they potentially even could guarantee it. LBTZ here, the player that could potentially knock out Crazy Moving and give T1 the no chance. It is the team matchups here, so we expect Crazy Moving to beat Dooney Zuni. He's made himself weaker. We see Cassante on the bench. But on Weibo's side of things, they're maybe just kind of seeing who is the strongest body. It doesn't look like either of them have made each other weaker. It's just which of us is the strongest, and we'll leave them in the game.
Still a little bit scary though. Dooney Zuni getting knocked down to 5 HP. I mean, we are only on 6-1, so it's okay. It's calculated, but it looked like Crazy Moving had a much stronger board anyway. You know, obviously Dooney Zuni made their board weaker, but it still looked like an absolute blowout. If you've ever seen a good Soul Fighter board, this is the one. That is a good frame of reference. That is insanely strong. And Dooney Zuni is going to be doing a few more roll down here as we go into potentially, well, it is going to be the final match that determines the outcome of this game.
TF2 coming here for Dooney Zuni could be an important hit. We know we've been running that TF on the board for quite a while. Soul Fighter, maybe this is the end of the road for it. You did say it's, if you're going to play it, this is the spot to. But comparing with some of these more meta comps, these S tier compositions, the likes of Orlok Cassante, the likes of Sorks, maybe isn't room in the top 2 for this composition, but there doesn't have to be. They know that they just have to deny T1 getting 1-2.
Yeah, so they just need to get 1 win of either of the players here, and it looks like is going to be the case. The Soul Fighters, it's 1 HP, and it looks like it's going to be a blowout for both of them. So very, very well fought out towards the end. T1 did such a good job of getting towards the final ending, but unfortunately, just right at the end, a lot of their units were denied, and it looks like Weibo's done very well to cap out with these 5 costs.
And picking up both wins there, you could hear the reaction from the players. It meant so much. Getting this first win over the line is really, really important. I thought potentially they wouldn't have both people in the top 2. I didn't think that was going to be the case. I thought Crazy Moving looked like the player that could win out, but just making sure there's no doubt in their mind. Weibo picking up the game win and the series win here, and T1 bot 2 in every game so far. They've got to change things up coming into tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure. And interesting to see, I wanted to comment on the parallels that we've seen with a lot of these players. Kind of a tit-for-tat exchange of things. You see, you know, in the first game, we saw someone, they take the crew line, they take the econ augments, and then another person has to match them. Here we've seen Invested with the sorcerers. They had to do the exact same thing, because if one player takes Invested and they use all their gold on 4-2, they roll down to pretty much 0 gold. The other player has to do the exact same, and I don't even know if they were quick enough to see that. If one player took Invested, started rolling, and their teammate screams at them, go, 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 go. The other player's using all of their gold as well, but it looks like it's the strategy of you have to deny. You have to deny.
You're not going to greed out that extra econ. Like you said, you're just going to roll down and try to deny the other team as well.
And we see the winners here on stage. Weibo Gaming able to take the upset over T1. Fantastic showing by them. And now looking forward to seeing them in the upper bracket tomorrow while T1 drops down.
Yeah, T1 dropping down. This is the team that finished 2nd last year in the TFT tournament. And coming into this one, they've made a change in the roster. They brought in a team